Chapter 1236. The next day, early in the morning, all of the branches of the Great Tang Newspaper Company delivered the day's newspaper to the homes of the subscribers as quickly as possible. The notice board of the Yamen was also updated with the day's new content. Almost all of the Great Tang citizens acted as usual, not noticing anything amiss. However, when more people finished reading the newspaper, a portion of them noticed a problem with it, and the entire Great Tang began to fall into chaos. In Hanyuan Hall, Li Longji sat upright while the officials stood by his side, listening to the contents of the newspaper. From today onwards, the royal court will add a new policy. First, the tax on farmers, such as the tax on farmers and the poll tax, will be replaced with currency. All farmers will have to sell their crops to raise money. When the first clause was read out, the officials who were qualified to attend the royal court frowned as they pondered over the function of this clause. After a moment of contemplation, most of them found that it didn't have much of an effect. At most, the grain that had been handed over previously would be converted into money, and the farmers would have to sell their crops themselves. Li Longji narrowed his eyes, and after a moment of contemplation, he nodded. The reporter continued to read, "Second, all cultivators are allowed to work together with other cultivators in the surrounding area. All cultivators are allowed to work together in groups of 100 households, or in villages. A leader is chosen, and the members of the group are the owners of all the land. The leader can choose two types of farming. The first is to negotiate the distribution of the crops. That is to say, the owner of the land will reach an agreement with the leader, and the variety of crops to be farmed each year will be decided by the leader. The second is to lease the land. That is to say, the leader will lease the land of all the farmers and hire the owner of the land to work in the fields. All decisions will be made by the leader, and they will be protected by the corresponding laws." The moment these words were said, the officials burst into an uproar. They finally understood the function of the first clause. The first clause was to serve the second clause. After a transaction, the amount of money one would earn would depend on the price set at the time of the transaction. If one sold for more money, one would make a profit. If one sold for less money, one would make a loss. All of the risks would be shifted to the owner of the land. The next day, there was another way of land acquisition. If one chose the first option or the second option, the owner of the land would have to bet with the team leader. They would bet that the team leader's decision this year was correct. Although it was said that it could not be changed, in fact, once the seeds were planted, they could not be changed even if they wanted to. It would delay the growth of the crops. If one were to choose the second option, the owner of the land would avoid the risk of selling their own grain. They would pay for the land and receive two portions of money. One portion would be the rent for the land, and the other portion would be the income from labor. There were two risks in the process. One was the risk of not being hired, and the other was the risk of their own income being reduced when the price of grain was high. If it was completely up to the team leader to decide, the team leader was likely to exclude those who were not good at farming. These people would only receive a portion of the income from the lease of the land, but they themselves would be unemployed. "I don't agree." Without waiting for the person reading the newspaper to continue, Zhang Jiuling stepped out and said bluntly. He had a good relationship with the Zhang family and the Wang family, but he could not let his personal relationship go to waste. Li Longji put the microphone to his mouth and said, "Minister Zhang, stand down. Today's court assembly is not to hear whether you agree or not. It is to let you listen carefully and act accordingly. Today is different from the past. Everything that is done, starting from me, to the head of the secretariat, to the lower ministries, you only need to cooperate and are not allowed to question." However, Yuan Qianyao, who was nearby, did not agree. He stood out forcefully and asked loudly, "Your Majesty, I don't know why this policy was not brought out to discuss with us first before coming to a conclusion. Why did it have to be passed today? Bring it out to discuss? Didn't you need to discuss for a long time? Can you guarantee that not a single piece of information will be leaked? Do you know what the consequences will be once the nobles of the Great Tang know about this policy in advance? Minister Yuan Qing, I ask you, do you know the situation that our dynasty is facing now?" Li Longji threw out a few questions consecutively and waited for Yuan Qianyao to give a reply. Yuan Qianyao pondered for a moment and said loudly, "Your Majesty, our dynasty is now filled with the benevolence of the emperor. The people are of one mind, commerce is connected, agriculture is flourishing, and the army. Speak frankly, I don't like to listen to people talk for a long time without saying anything practical. No matter how much you flatter, the problems that should exist will not be solved. Li Longji interrupted Yuan Qianyao's words. All the officials, including Zhang Zhong, sighed secretly. They felt that His Majesty had been influenced by Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan to be too utilitarian. There must be practical returns for his efforts. If not, he would definitely not waste his time. Yuan Qianyao coughed lightly and changed his way of speaking. Your Majesty, our dynasty's national treasury is now filled with money. This year's national treasury can't be used up just based on the budget. As the agriculture temple has been vigorously researching crops, the cultivators all over the country know how to be flexible when farming. Furthermore, they use fertilizers and pesticides. The crop output has more than doubled. In addition, the roads are well repaired, the railways are connected, the caravans are organized into a large scale, and the small products developed by the Ministry of Works help the people increase the efficiency of manual labor. The situation is very good. Also, in terms of education, many people spontaneously learn to read with their children at night. There are countless schools all over the country, and they can participate in the work of heaven and earth. Everything is very good. Good. I naturally know that there are good aspects. However, in the way of heaven and earth, there must be a yin and a yang. There must be a disadvantage to every advantage. I also know that our Tang Empire's military is strong, our weapons are advanced, and our morale is high. We can fight whoever we want. However, I am asking about the disadvantages of the advantages. When Li Longji said this, he was very proud. Especially in the past 2 years, the Ministry of Works had developed a lot of research results. For example, pesticides and fertilizers, as well as the improvements made by the agriculture temple, the development of the entire country was like flying. No matter which place was affected by the disaster, as long as the people were fine. As for the money and food that the people lost, the imperial court would directly make up for it. Furthermore, it wasn't like in the past. When the disaster struck, the people would be very grateful just by reducing the rent or sending people to cook a few bowls of porridge. At the very least, they didn't have to leave their homes and die on the road. But now, when the disaster struck, the people's homes would be registered with the government. Even if a cow died in your home, the imperial court would compensate you with a new one. If your house collapsed, it was easy. When the disaster was over, a new house would be built for you. If it was a drought, the government would arrange for you to work elsewhere. They would definitely not let you bear the pain of the disaster alone. This was a great contribution. In the past, which emperor had done this? Which emperor dared to say or think about it? Only Zhen. Only Zhen's Kaiyuan era. Your Majesty is right. Minister of Works Zhang Zhong stepped forward and said, even though our government is harmonious, there are still some disadvantages. Although Regional Commander Zhang and Deputy Regional Commander Wang have done many things, such as providing for the elderly, educating the young, and treating the sick, all of these are national benefits that don't require the people to spend money. However, in the process of rapid development, many things have happened that are not conducive to the stability of the country. Moreover, it has reached a critical period, so we have to investigate and take action. When Zhang Zhong said this, some people started to pout and cursed in their hearts. Why are you pretending to be a big wolf, Zhang Zhong and Deputy Regional Commander Wang? It's as if you aren't familiar with them. If you don't stand out and show off, will it kill you to directly say that you have a son and daughter-in-law? How shameless. You are really shameless. You are using the fact that you have a good son and daughter-in-law to attack others. Where is your conscience? Do you still care about the friendship of your colleagues? Although they were cursing in their hearts, they had to endure this anger. Otherwise, if they offended them verbally, the revenge would come very quickly. The first to take action would probably be their other children. Yuan Qianyao's face didn't look very good when he was mocked by the emperor and the Minister of Works at the same time. He lowered his head and thought about it before saying, there are also disadvantages, but they are not big. Due to the increase in national benefits, a small number of people have become lazy. Especially the policy that the imperial court will pay for the raising of infants, all kinds of men have started to work. Is there anything else? Li Longji asked again. Yes. Yuan Qianyao said firmly, there are also people who are active at this good time. After they earn money, they won't spend it for a while. They buy a lot of luxury goods and compare their wealth with others. Their friendship with others is usually measured by their wealth. They are arrogant because of their wealth, causing others to compare with them. After saying that, Yuan Qianyao probably thought that he had admitted his mistake, so he explained, of course, this is human nature. Moreover, rich people buy a lot of luxury goods, which will help increase the income of the imperial court's treasury. It can promote the competitiveness of others and make them work harder. Logically speaking, after 3 generations, it will return to peace. Logically speaking, if we don't solve it immediately, we won't need to wait for 3 generations. This generation will definitely cause the country to be in turmoil and the people's hearts to be unstable. Everything is based on money. At that time, will the world belong to people or to money? Those who only know their nature and food are animals. Money can buy sex, food, clothes, and houses. With money you can do anything. Do you still want ethics and morals? If you lose the warmth of people and only have money left, I don't care about this country. Li Longji said angrily. In the end, he had already started to hit the armrest with all his might. Your Majesty, please calm down. The officials persuaded in unison with tacit understanding. Yuan Qianyao trembled and knelt on the ground. He said, this official has committed a crime of not thinking deeply and not being aware of many things. Li Longji waved his hand. Get up, I don't blame you. I did the same in the past. Who would have thought that there was such a hidden danger behind the prosperity? It was Xiao Bao and Cuckoo who told me over and over again. After analyzing it over and over again, I finally understood that things in the world are unpredictable. I believe that all of you know how capable the 2 of them are. When they encountered monstrous disasters, the 2 of them worked together and stubbornly fought against them. When they encountered military disasters, the 2 of them laughed and chatted non-stop. When they said that they didn't have enough money, the 2 of them talked about the world and turned stone into gold. No matter what they encountered, I have never seen the 2 of them afraid. As for your impeachment, it was just a joke to the 2 of them. However, every time they talked about today's matter, the 2 of them would always have a serious expression. Occasionally, they would show a panicked expression and sigh when talking to me. All of this shows that the pressure this matter has on the 2 of them is far greater than the previous few cases. The sum of the previous cases is not as serious as this. Isn't this enough? Isn't this enough to explain the problem? What exactly is hidden behind the prosperity that makes the 2 of them so afraid? Do you think there is anything in the world that can make them afraid? As Li Longji's voice fell, the sound of people inhaling could be heard in Hanyuan Hall. Under the warm sunlight, the officials felt their bodies turn cold. They had always known that Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan were strong. It was a kind of strength that was soaked in their souls. They had never been afraid of anything and could easily solve any problem in front of them. They were knowledgeable in astronomy, knowledgeable in geography, and knowledgeable in the study of things in between. Regardless of whether it was the zither, chess, calligraphy, painting, poetry, song, or poetry, whether it was farming, craftsmen, or merchants, they were able to spread government and administration, and as a general, they were able to open up new territories. They were invincible in battle and were invincible. Such people would actually be afraid. Who wouldn't be afraid of something that could make them afraid? However, it clearly looked very good now and there wasn't much of a problem. Why were they so scared? Brother Yongqing, do you know? Prime Minister Song Jing asked. He was asking Zhang Zhong. After all, he was Zhang Xiaobao's father and had probably interacted with him often. Everyone's gazes simultaneously shifted to Zhang Zhong. Zhang Zhong considered, then solemnly said, Xiao Bao and Cuckoo once said that our great Tang does not fear calamities. Calamities are nothing more than rebuilding one's home. We also do not fear weapons. When we fight with our lives. As long as the hearts of the people are united, as long as we are of one heart, there is no obstacle that cannot be overcome. What they fear is that the hearts of the people are scattered. Officials do not work for their own interests, instead using public office for personal gain. Farmers do not plow their fields, instead stealing their jobs. Craftsmen do not learn their skills, instead using shoddy goods. Merchants do not sell their goods, instead hoarding them and inflating their prices. Teachers do not look good, instead choosing students for their own benefits. Doctors do not inherit their virtues, instead using money to divide the affliction. If they do not control it now, when the time comes, it will be very difficult to change it. When the time comes, who will make the first move? Will they be able to kill all the people in the world? How many years will it take to change a nation that has lost its spiritual pillar? What methods will they use to recover the original soul? That kind of country is not a civilization, but a slave to money. Thus, Xiao Bao and Cuckoo have always been worried about this matter. They need to find a good balance in the process of development, and at this moment, they need everyone's help to settle on this point first. We can talk about other points later. After Zhang Zhong finished speaking, he used a sincere expression to look at his colleagues in the hall. Some nodded at him, some responded with firm gazes, and some lowered their heads in deep thought. After a while, Li Longji ordered, "Continue reading." At this time, no one objected. Everyone was frightened by what Zhang Zhong had said. The person reading the report took a deep breath and read again, "The second decree, the Great Tang Bank will reduce the loan interest by 10%, the deposit interest by 10%, and the reserve rate by 20%, using the internal funds. Any handicraft industry with more than 100 workers and less than 500 workers can enjoy a one-off loan of 3,000 strings of coins from the bank. Those with more than 500 workers and less than 1,000 workers can enjoy a one-off loan of 10,000 strings of coins from the bank. Those with more than 1,000 workers can enjoy a one-off loan of less than 200,000 strings of coins from the bank according to the requirements of their development plan, and the loan amount can be increased in the future." The officials knew that Zhang Xiaobao was starting to give out money, allowing the people of Great Tang to take out their savings and spend it. At the same time, he was encouraging handicraft industries to swallow each other. There were many consequences, but the most direct one was the depreciation of the currency, even if the country did not increase the amount of currency issued. Song Jing pondered for a moment, then walked up to Li Longji and asked softly, "Your Majesty, can you let the currency depreciate?" His voice was soft, but there was a microphone in front of him, so everyone heard it. This caused Song Jing to be taken aback, and he sighed helplessly. Li Longji smiled and shook his head. "It's fine. This is soft depreciation, also known as temporary depreciation. As long as the imperial court does not suddenly increase the amount of currency issued, there is no need to worry about the currency being worthless. After all, this is a cyclical process. The depreciation that you are worried about comes from the taxation of currency circulation. Every time you spend money and earn money, there will be taxation. You're afraid that the imperial court will spend money in a short period of time, causing the production of actual goods to be unable to keep up with the sudden spending of money, resulting in a depreciation of the currency. Is that right?" Song Jing nodded. "That's right. Furthermore, if we do this, the people will take their money out of the bank and spend in a rush. This will cause the price of goods to rise, and if the goods are expensive, the money will be cheap. Of course, this is a small problem, and Xiao Bao does not care about it. Song Qing, do you know what the main source of goods is?" At this time, Li Longji felt that he could be a teacher. Back then, he had chased after Xiao Bao and asked for a long time before he finally figured it out. Gao Li-shi, who was standing at the side, also had a smile in his eyes. At that time, he had also followed along with Wu Huifei. If he did not learn, he would not have known. After learning, he realized that the more he learned, the more ignorant he became. The methods, goals, and execution of the various historical dynasties that he had read in books were far inferior to Xiao Bao's. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. Xiao Bao had played the economic game to the height of the Dao. It was unknown when the people who were learning now would be able to learn all of Xiao Bao's economic knowledge and continue to improve. As a prime minister, Song Jing was quite capable. When he heard the emperor's question, he immediately replied, "Your Majesty, is it the production of land and mining of minerals?" "What you said is only a part of it. There is more." Li Longji narrowed his eyes and said, "There is more. There is also the transportation of goods from the outside. This is the most direct." Song Jing said, "Then how do you do it? During the transportation process, how can you guarantee that the domestic currency will not depreciate in the flow of goods and goods between the cost and profit?" Li Longji asked again. He wanted to show his professionalism. Song Jing regretted. He regretted that he had not properly studied Zhang Xiaobao's book recently. That book was only circulated among the upper class, and ordinary people could not even think about reading it. He was not afraid that others would read it and learn it, but he was afraid that they would learn it at a half-baked level and use it blindly. At that time, Zhang Xiaobao would have to come back and clean up the mess. For example, a person who thought that he was smart would start to play with cash flow after reading the book. He would use all kinds of methods to collect funds. Then, a problem would occur in a certain part of the process, and the chain of funds would be broken and all would be lost. Zhang Xiaobao did not want to add such trouble to himself. Song Jing decided to go back and learn properly. Otherwise, if he was always questioned by the emperor in front of other people, it would be embarrassing. Song Jing hesitated for a moment, then braced himself and replied, "This subject feels that we can use force to solve the problem and make the nature of the trade with the outside world less fair. This way, we can use low-cost goods to exchange for high-profit goods. This is a bandit's way of thinking. It's a sign of incompetence. Then just say that you are like Xiao Bao and Cuckoo, who did not even exchange goods and relied on the army to fight for them." Li Longji was amused by Song Jing's words. "Your Majesty, please teach this subject." Song Jing played along. "Fine, we will teach you. It's your fault for not learning properly. What you just said was correct, but you did not mention the most important problem. The key lies in the production and application of production technology. Whether it is planting in the fields, mining in the mines, or trading with the outside world, they all require technical support. The problem of the fields is left to the agriculture temple, the updating of the mining tools is left to the Ministry of Works, and the trading with the outside world is also the Ministry of Works. If we want to reduce the actual cost of the goods, we have to increase the cost of the technology. For example, how much do you think a mirror is worth? A palm-sized mirror is not even worth a copper coin, but when we trade with the outside world, we can give it a value of 10 strings of coins. This is the cost advantage brought by technology. If you don't have the technology, you can only accept the other party's cost. If you want to own something, you can only pay as much as the other party says. Thus, a portion of the taxes that our great Tang earns can be allocated to the technical research department, and a portion can be used to build infrastructure, such as roads. Once the roads are built, the cost of transporting goods will naturally be reduced. For example, if you send 5 people to transport a cart of rice, and the road is not good, you will have to travel for several months. Even after the cart of rice is eaten by you, you will still starve to death. The time wasted by your 5 people is actually non-productive consumption. I might as well not ask for a cart of rice and let the 5 of you find a place to raise chickens. Li Longji gestured as he spoke. That's not right. Song Jing pondered for a moment before shaking his head. Your Majesty, look, the land needs people to grow it. If you don't grow it, someone else will. There are only so many lands, and with the same technology, you don't need to be a laborer. Wouldn't it be a waste for you to go and farm? It's the same for raising chickens. Chickens need to eat, and no matter what they eat, they will consume the local resources. The resources are only in a cycle, and they don't increase. It's not like obtaining things from the outside world. Your thinking is wrong. The resources are indeed in a cycle, but we don't make use of all of them. For example, if you don't raise chickens, can you fully utilize the resources of the land and forests in the area where you raise chickens? Furthermore, these resources are increasing. For example, sunlight and wind. If you don't use them, they will still exist. When the time comes, it will be wasted. The most direct manifestation of sunlight is the growth of plants. There's also water. Clouds bring rain from other places to our great Tang. If you don't use them, they will flow into the sea. Why don't you hoard them and raise fishes? As for wind, it's not easy to make use of it now. The technology can't keep up. For example, the generator in the wind can produce electricity to illuminate the land. If you think that illumination is useless and people only want to read books, then you should think of using it to replace candles. There's also heating. For example, hatching chickens in winter. If you use electricity to hatch chickens, won't you be saving other resources? Li Longji began to give examples to Song Jing. In fact, when he reached the end, Song Jing already knew, but he didn't want to interrupt him. It wasn't easy for the emperor to teach you, so shouldn't you listen carefully? This subject understands. Song Jing saw that His Majesty had stopped talking and was drinking tea, so he immediately said respectfully. Li Longji nodded contentedly and instructed the person reading the report, "Continue reading. There are many policies today." Chapter 1237. Article 3. Males who have reached the age of 18 and meet the standards of health must serve 2 months of military service every year from the age of 25 and receive military service subsidies. Males between the age of 26 and 30 who meet the standards of health must serve 1 month of military service every year. Those who evade military service will have all their benefits revoked. The reader continued to read the third article. Based on the previous situation, he stopped reading and waited for the others to discuss. The officials fell silent. No one made a sound. They all looked at the reader. Continue. Li Longji spoke. Article 4. Those who participate in the imperial examinations must accumulate 100 days of voluntary teaching and 200 days of voluntary social work. Those who fail to complete the examinations will be disqualified and will not be allowed to participate in the examinations again for 5 years. When the fourth article was read, the 2 sides of the stairs of Honyuan Palace began to buzz with discussion. The officials whispered to each other. Wang Bei was very close to Zhang Zhong. As they were both ministers, there was only one person between them. When he heard the fourth article, he couldn't help but squeeze to Zhang Zhong's side and ask, "Zhang Xiaobao, what a Wang Wan. Now you feel that you are not afraid of anything. You are beginning to raise your blade against the officials. How bold, how bold. Zhang Zhong, you gave birth to a good son." Zhang Zhong smiled and nodded slightly at Wang Bei. "Why do you say that, Lord Wang? Officials take the imperial examinations. If you are a local official, don't you still need to understand education and the people? What's wrong with learning first? Or directly manage the economic field? At the very least, you need to understand the goods and needs of the people, right?" Speaking of the economy, I just remembered that last night, Xiaobao called and said that the new group we formed together might be able to generate profits this year. It's no longer about breaking even. He said that it's about accumulating and accumulating. After settling down to a certain extent, it will finally start to flourish. Wei Wei was stunned. Then, he became even more indignant. "Zhang Zhong, do you think that the matters of the world scholars can be enticed with money? Do you think that a noble person can be enticed with money? Do you think about 3 million strings of profits? It said that we will first distribute the profits and then consider selling them overseas. This way, we will be able to generate profits every year." Zhang Zhong finished his own words. Wang Ku was stunned again. He looked away and took 4 deep breaths. When he faced Zhang Zhong again, he asked seriously, "Really? Does Lord Wang want to see the proposal?" Zhang Zhong asked. "I'll believe you this time. Where were we just now? You can't tempt people with benefits." "Yes, there is such a thing. We can't use money or benefits. This is the righteousness of the country. Upholding virtue and proper conduct is virtue and virtue. Zhang Zhong, brother Yongqing, you're going too far by talking to me about money. Am I someone that can be moved by money? How can I be unreasonable when you're talking to me? Actually, I deeply agree with what you said before. Yes, you're absolutely right. Students were taking the imperial examinations because they wanted to become officials. How could officials not know the hardships of the common people? In my opinion, the days are still too little. In total, it should be 500 days. However, if the time limit is set for too long this time, it might be repeated. It's better to try it out first. Wang Bei patted Zhang Zhong's shoulder affectionately and said righteously, "I think so too." Zhang Zhong still responded with a smile. "Yes, yes, yes. It's not easy to think of the same thing. Brother Yongqing, are you free tonight? I heard that prawn rakes are ready to be eaten. Your restaurant bought a lot of them. How about you treat us to a meal?" Wang Bei said with a greedy look. "Of course I should treat you. How about tonight?" Zhang Zhong agreed. Okay. See you tonight." Wang Bei nodded happily and returned to his original position. He ignored the person in the middle as if he didn't exist. That person was the Minister of Personnel, Pei Guangting. Pei Guangting heard everything and suddenly realized that people who were in charge of money really had no resistance to money. 3 million strings of cash wasn't just Wang Bei's profit, but he had been bribed. Can't you have some backbone? You lost in one round, and it was such a thorough defeat. After belittling Wang Bei in his heart, Pei Guangting thought for a while and squeezed in Zhang Zhong's position. He turned his head and whispered, "Brother Yongqing, does that company still need to increase its shares? I have some spare money. You know that if money isn't spent and doesn't flow, it will lose its effect on the economy. I'm willing to contribute to the prosperity of Tang's economy." Pei Guangting was more than 10 years older than Zhang Zhong. His third grandson was already 4 years old. He wanted to consider for his family. In fact, it was not bad to rely on bribery, but there were very few officials who bribed now. Even if he did, he couldn't help much. If bribed officials made mistakes, they would be punished. He didn't dare to oppose, even if he was in charge of the Ministry of Personnel. He wasn't afraid of the Censorate or the head of the Secretariat. He even dared to argue with the emperor. However, he was afraid of Xiao Bei and the others who were just like him. Moreover, the emperor's argument showed that he had the ability. He was caught by Xiao Bei and the others on a whim, but no one helped him. Therefore, it was better to find a proper business and invest more to get a return. He had shares in the new company, but not a lot. It would be good if he could increase his investment. "Brother Liancheng, don't worry." Zhang Zhong comforted Pei Guangting and said, "You'll understand if you continue to listen. There are many benefits to being an official. Otherwise, we as officials have no money, but businessmen have money. If we put all our thoughts on money, how can we use psychological politics? How many people can become saints?" Pei Guangting's eyes lit up. He asked for confirmation. "In that case, even if official Wang supports us, the new company will still be profitable?" "Of course, but Brother Liancheng will have to work hard in the future." "What do you mean?" Pei Guangting asked again. After the hidden high salary, Xiao Bao and Cuckoo demanded that the officials must be honest. As the saying goes, if you take someone's money, you have to solve problems. The officials who received the hidden salary have to do things. The faster our great Tang develops, the more loopholes there will be. We may not be able to catch all the patrolling officers, and to catch the officials, we need your department to participate. What do you think we should do? Zhang Zhong listened to his son's request and began to compromise with the officials. However, he also knew that his son's schemes were never the kind where he would take a step forward. He took a step back because there was a need for greater benefits. "I've given you face. Do you dare to take another step forward?" Moreover, this exchange was beneficial to the Great Tang as a whole. Otherwise, they would not use the method of exchange but other means to achieve their goals. Pei Guangting clearly understood the temperaments of Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan. It did not matter what they obtained in the end, and they should not covet it. It was fine as long as they could benefit. Otherwise, if they really angered them, they might not give them any benefits at all. Thus, he solemnly promised Zhang Zhong, "Don't worry. Any official who takes money but doesn't do anything during the Great Tang's rapid development will be severely punished." The lightest punishment is imprisonment, and the heaviest punishment is extermination. Thank you. Zhang Zhong clasped his hands in respect. No need, it's my duty. Pei Guangting returned the gesture. Zhang Zhong had dealt with 2 people, so the rest was simple. There was still the Bureau of Rights, Bureau of Justice, and Bureau of Military Personnel. If the Bureau of Military Personnel passed, the Bureau of Military Personnel would not dare to obstruct them. Since that was the case, he began to approach Su Yi's side and make a deal with him. Similarly, when he gave him benefits, the great Tang would benefit. The officials in the court had no time to care about where Zhang Zhong was going or who he was exchanging with. Many of them were deep in thought. The 5th. Wait. Just as the reporter was about to continue reading, Xiao Song, the Bureau of Military Personnel, shouted. He was very imposing, and it was obvious that he was from the Bureau of Military Personnel. Official Xiao has objections? Li Longji glanced over and asked. The officials suddenly looked at Zhang Zhong as if they were looking at a joke. Zhang Zhong had already reached Su Yi's side. Seeing the Bureau of Military Personnel stand out, he stopped what he was doing and looked over in surprise. The situation became awkward. The officials wanted to see Zhang Zhong make a fool of himself. Look, there was a problem in the place that you thought would be the least problematic. What are you going to do now? Some people looked at Wang Bei. Wang Bei wanted to curse Xiao Song for betraying Cuckoo, and curse the people who looked over. Damn it, why are you looking at me? You want me to stand up and support Xiao Song? Then when can I earn back the money I invested? Don't you King just want to watch others fight? The problem is, do you know how much pressure I'm under? I can't earn back the money I invested, and then the benefits from Zhang family and Wang family were cancelled. Later on, I had a grandson who was about to be born, so I was able to enjoy some benefits again, and it was always given to the grandson who was born. It would have been easier without these benefits. Ever since there were benefits for children, my life has been getting worse and worse. The servants in the family don't look at me right now. I'm about to betray everyone. Didn't you see that I went over to talk to him personally instead of standing up? I'll remember you. Don't expect me to give you money easily in the future. Wang Bei cursed in his heart as he glared back. The situation paused for a moment. Xiao Song seemed to feel that he had given enough time for others to think, so he deliberately said in a rough voice, "The 4th clause refers to the humanities exam, right? What about my martial arts exam? I strongly request that the Imperial Court not discriminate against us martial artists. In the future, those who take the martial arts exam must also take out 300 days to do volunteer work." I'll stop here. Even if the policy doesn't stipulate that those who take part in the martial arts exam need to do volunteer work, the Ministry of War will strictly implement this policy. Unless I'm removed, as long as I minister, those who take part in the martial arts exam can forget about taking advantage of the loopholes. This time, it was the people who were watching the show who cursed in their hearts. Xiao Song, would you die if you didn't flatter him? Without waiting for others to finish cursing, Xiao Song spoke again. Also, regarding the 3rd clause on military service, I declare that the Ministry of War will be strict with those who take part in the military service. We will unconditionally complete His Majesty's training. From strategy, tactics, to personal military skills, we will train those who take part in the military service in all aspects. We will train them into qualified soldiers of the great Tang Empire, to the point where they can fight and win when pulled out. We will also strengthen the ideological education of the army so that all officers and soldiers will not retreat, waver, or hesitate in the face of danger. That's all I have to say. As he finished speaking, Xiao Song took a big step back and stood back. The people who were watching the show were speechless. Xiao Song, you're the minister. You have the nerve to stand out and not show any restraint? Are you afraid of Wang Wan to this extent? Li Longji held back his laughter and said with relief, "Very good. Official Zhao's awareness is very high. With him in the Ministry of War, I can rest assured. Yes, Hong still lacks a martial arts teacher. Why don't you add the position of Grand Tutor to the Crown Prince? I won't let you down." Xiao Song stood out again to show his loyalty. He got a first-rank official just like that. A first-rank official was still a first-rank official. Although the Grand Tutor of the Crown Prince was an empty title, he would still receive a rank 1 salary. However, when he thought of empty titles, he also remembered that there was a group of young fellows who also had empty titles. They were the young Minister of the Supreme Court and the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice. They were the 9 people of the Great Tang, no, the 10 people of the patrol team. They held multiple titles and did not need to go through any department to convict someone. They just did it directly, depending on their mood. Therefore, these officials who wanted to stand out and say something shut up. The Minister of Rights, Su Yi, who was also waiting to watch the show, put away his thoughts and asked Zhang Zhong with a smile, "Yongqing is here?" "He's here. There's a matter regarding the application and management of video education, as well as the planning of the printing of newspapers and books. Do you want to take a look?" When Zhang Zhong spoke again, his tone was gentle. It was a display of confidence. Su Yi could understand Zhang Zhong's confidence. If he had such a son and daughter-in-law, he would be so confident too. He asked, "Is there a lot to talk about?" "Yes, I'll go after the court meeting." Zhang Zhong lowered his posture even more. "Don't, I have something to ask." "I'll go. My washing machine is leaking. It's not the kind that leaks next door. It's the kind that leaks by itself when I don't need to. I was washing it when the water ran out." Su Yi didn't dare to trouble Zhang Zhong now. He wanted to go there personally. As for the leak, was that a problem? "That's fine. There's probably a mistake with the seal. I'll have someone go take a look. At the same time, there's a new washing machine that can rotate in 2 directions. It's better than rotating in 1 direction. I'll be very grateful if you can help me try it out," Zhang Zhong said with a smile. His face was worth a new 2-way washing machine. He would probably take out those that had rotating barrels as well. "Well said, well said." Su Yi also smiled happily. Seeing that the matter was settled, Zhang Zhong went back to the topic. The secret exchange of benefits was so dirty. However, as long as it was good for the common people, it was worth it. Most of the common people only saw what was in front of them and what was in front of them. They never knew how many people had paid for their benefits. Yu Wanrong, who was also the Prime Minister, had no choice but to stand up and speak up. His current position was very high, and he was on the same level as the secretary. Thus, he had to figure out what Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan wanted to do. Of course, he was also clear that the reason he could become an official now was because Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan didn't stop him. Although they had a small conflict in the past, they recognized his ability. This made Yu Wanrong sigh. He admitted that he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. He couldn't do it when he was in the position of Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan and still not deliberately attack his opponents. Because if the 2 of them wanted to deal with him, they didn't need to seek balance or exchange benefits. It was just a matter of a sentence. Perhaps they didn't even see him as an opponent, even if his father was the Minister of Works, who was of a lower rank than him. Every time he thought of them, he would feel a kind of majestic aura, vast and unstoppable. As long as you didn't cross their bottom line, they wouldn't care. However, when they cared, you would be gone. Thus, when Yu Wanrong became the Prime Minister this year, his conduct had always been very proper. At this moment, he had to ask clearly on behalf of all the officials. "Your Majesty, after this subject heard these 4 conditions, his heart is not clear. Speak." In truth, Li Longji hadn't received any explanation from Zhang Xiaobao, but he was confident that he understood thoroughly. This was a kind of tacit understanding, and the source of this tacit understanding came from their daily interactions. Yu Wanrong paused, then said, "The first 2 conditions seem to shake the foundation, and the last 2 are exhausting manpower. This subject wants to understand what Xiao Bao and Cuckoo are thinking." When he spoke, he didn't call Zhang Zhong like he did. He was clearly the closest person, yet he still insisted on calling him something like Jidushi Zhang. This made others think of how Zhang Zhong had been at the very beginning of the 2's imperial examinations. The result made Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan feel extremely awkward. Quite a few of the people standing on either side of the steps nodded. When Li Longji heard the first two conditions, he had already considered this question. Hearing this, he said, "We will tell you. The first two conditions are to bring out the hidden contradictions. There should be similar policies behind them. Once they are brought out, they will be resolved together, and we will obtain several years of stability. The third and fourth conditions don't actually require the common people to become soldiers, and it's also not impossible to have no students to become teachers and volunteer. This involves psychology. Every year at the age of 18, they become soldiers and receive military management. This can help the common people develop a strict and resolute way of thinking and doing things. This has a great effect on the stability of the country. When students go to teach and volunteer, there is one thing you have to know. Only when a person is willing to contribute to something will they have some attachment to it. If they go to teach, they will interact with the children. If one day they become an official and do things that involve the children's interests, I believe that the chances of them standing on the children's side will be very high. Similarly, when doing volunteer work, they still need to first understand it, or perhaps understand and feel it while doing it. Most of the students are actually not up to standard in terms of living. If you don't believe me, during the imperial examinations this fall, you can ask each of them to cook a dish. See how many people can cook it. This is a part of life. How can people who don't know how to live be an official? We like people from Jianjia Academy because they know how to cook and mend their own clothes, so they understand the people's livelihood better. Zishou, do you know how to cook? As Li Longji spoke, he suddenly asked Zhang Jiuling, whose name was Zishou. Zhang Jiuling smiled faintly. Your Majesty wants to try this humble subject's meat with preserved vegetables. The preserved vegetables are produced in this subject's hometown. This subject is afraid that your Majesty is used to Xiao Bao's food and will find this subject's food tasteless. Ha, we believe that you can cook better than Xiao Bao. The food from one's hometown naturally has the taste of one's hometown, Li Longji said meaningfully. Zhang Jiuling shook his head. Wei Wei said, this subject doesn't dare. Xiao Bao's hometown is Great Tang, and the food in his restaurant is divided into different cuisines. He can even create a unique taste for wild vegetables, so how can this subject compare to him? Everything that is born or raised can be eaten. This subject definitely can't do the same with Xiao Bao's ability. Do you understand now, Qing? Li Longji turned around and asked Yu Wanrong. Yu Wanrong muttered to himself for a moment before raising his head. I understand for now, but this subject is afraid that 300 days will be wasted on other aspects, which will be detrimental to my knowledge. That's not right. Zhang Jiuling, who had just finished answering Li Longji, didn't return to his seat and directly said, What is knowledge? Is it the University of Moderation? Is it the Book of Songs? What is waste? No matter what you do, no matter how small it seems, you can learn something from it. You should know that a withered grass in spring is a disaster, and a blossoming tree in autumn is also an anomaly. Every blade of grass and every tree is also a heart of love. Yu Wanrong had heard Zhang Jiuling's words. After thinking about it, he cupped his fists and nodded. I've learned. Li Longji laughed happily and instructed the person reading the newspaper. Continue. Chapter 1238. After receiving the order, the newspaper reader raised the newspaper and read, Article 5. Formulate specific regulations for national sports competitions and professionalize sports participants. After reading this article, he stopped and waited out of habit. This time, not only were the officials confused, but Li Longji was even more puzzled. Everyone knew that the most typical sports competition was football. Currently, every state had its own football team that represented the local government. There were two best stadiums, one in the capital and the other in Luzhou. Every state had their own stadiums. The wealthier places had better stadiums, while the poorer places only had stadiums for appearances. Some did not even have a lawn. Apart from the government, there were also private companies that were interested in forming their own football teams. There were even people who liked to play football who formed their own teams and played with others. Naturally, Football was not the only sport competition. There were many other sports such as badminton, billiards, track and field, swimming, and so on. What puzzled the people in Hanyuan Hall was why it was included in the government's decree when it was usually done for fun. Would it affect the country if it was done well or not? Hence, those who were confused looked at Zhang Zhong, hoping to get some information from him. Zhang Zhong was also confused. He looked at the other person and gave him a, "I don't know" expression. "I'll ask Xiao Bao later." Read it. Li Longji gave up on the idea of figuring it out for now. Article 6. Lift the restrictions on the purchase of lottery tickets, further crack down on private gambling houses, and increase the number of sports lottery tickets, the newspaper reader read out. Everyone understood the meaning of this article. In the past, buying lottery tickets depended on other people's wealth and income. The original plan was to control gambling, but Xiao Bao and Cuckoo realized that they could not control it. Since there were too many private gambling houses, since they could not control it, they might as well reduce it. Instead of letting the local people earn the money, it would be better for the court to take it. At least, it could be used for public welfare. The pursuit of profit was difficult to eliminate since ancient times. After a while, they thought that Article 5 might serve the purpose of Article 6. There must be rules to increase the number of lottery tickets. Otherwise, how would they sell the tickets if they stopped after 2 rounds? Li Longji gestured to the newspaper reader. The newspaper reader continued reading, Article 7. Encourage craftsmen to create their own skills, improve the technology protection law, strictly unify weights and measures, and reformulate the craftsman's skills assessment standards. Article 8. Increase food quarantine standards and gradually improve the implementation of food classification. Article 9. Implement the minimum income protection plan for migrant workers. There will be no upper limit on migrant workers' income. Formulate a standard for migrant workers' one-day working hours. Overtime will be double the wage. Increase the cycle of migrant workers' work and rest standards. A week of 7 days, with 1 day off in each cycle. The 10th rule. Wait, this subject has something to say. Yu Wenrong stopped the newspaper reader. He turned his head and asked the emperor, "Your Majesty, this subject doesn't understand. The officials have a rest. If the workers also rest, it's like building. If they rest, will the construction stop? Or when the ship is unloading goods at the dock, will it stop when it's time to rest? Should we stop?" Li Longji wasn't sure either. It was mainly because it was too sudden and he didn't have much time to react. After pondering for a while, he said, "You can take turns to rest. Or you can also work overtime like you do on a single day. As for why it's 7 days a week and not 10 days a week, I guess it's based on the Sunday of a certain place." Li Longji seemed to be quite knowledgeable. He knew about the Sunday. If he took a day off every 10 days, perhaps Xiao Bao and Cuckoo would think that it was too long. Yu Wenrong nodded and asked again, "If everyone takes a day off, won't it indirectly reduce the Tang people's work time, and thus reduce the production? What is the classification of the migrant workers? Do the farmers also need to rest?" There will be a supplementary explanation. It should be sent here before noon today. Zhang Zhong stood up and explained. Even now, he still didn't understand why his son and daughter-in-law didn't send the detailed explanation first. Instead, they made the others wait. That's fine. Yu Wenrong didn't ask any more questions. Instead, he said, "I've thought about the 9th rule a bit. It means to protect the people who work for them. They're worried that the employers will exploit them. But this way, the employers will be very selective when choosing people to work for them. Only in this way can they guarantee greater benefits. So many people with professional skills, when faced with this situation, won't they lose the opportunity to find a job? While protecting a portion of the people, they are actually harming a portion of the people. How does this work?" The officials all frowned. If it was in the past, perhaps some people would think that this matter didn't concern them. But now, they couldn't. The imperial court needed efficiency, and it also needed a civil servant to have a sense of responsibility. If they dared to be perfunctory when it came to official matters, they would definitely be taken down. As development sped up, there were more and more things to do, and the connections with the local authorities were also closer. Every day, every department sent out telegrams non-stop. There were always some matters that needed to be resolved. It was impossible to return to the leisurely days of the past. There were already many officials who couldn't ask for leave to go out with their families. Li Longji was very satisfied with the attitude of the officials in the imperial court, but he also couldn't think of a way to resolve the problems and contradictions that Xiao Bao and Cuckoo had come up with. Just as everyone was actively thinking, the person reading the newspaper gathered his courage and said, There is a 10th rule. There is. The 10th rule? Read it. Yu Wenrong said, overstepping his authority. Li Longji didn't have the heart to care about such a small matter, so he nodded. The 10th rule is that the local authorities will increase the expenditure on vocational skills training. In the past, the local authorities would passively accept the training of people looking for jobs, but they would actively require people to participate in the training. For example, the people who work at the docks will need to undergo basic training on the use of docks tools, so that they can understand the use of the tools and properly allocate their strength. The person reading the newspaper read out. That's more like it. At least there's a supplement to the previous rule. Xiao Bao and Cuckoo saw that the national treasury had too much money, so they helped to spend it. Li Longji said with a smile. The others nodded in agreement. Indeed, the national treasury's money was placed there and couldn't be spent immediately. The income of the past 2 years had increased too quickly, and it had broken the previous mindset of spending money. Moreover, the local officials didn't blindly ask for money to be spent for corruption, so the money could be used reasonably. However, new spending projects hadn't been found yet. It couldn't be said that the money couldn't be spent carelessly. The simplest way to spend money was to repair roads and river embankments. If they were to spread out throughout the country, the national treasury wouldn't have enough money. It might seem like a lot, but if one wanted to build roads, bridges, and river embankments at the same time, even if they threw in a fifth of the money, they wouldn't be able to build them. However, the problem was that there were other policies supporting the construction of roads. It was that the merchants would build them and then charge for them. The merchants were very active, and some logistics companies even worked with others to build roads. They needed to quickly ship out their goods, and after some calculations, as long as the fees collected from the roads and bridges exceeded the interest of the Great Tang Bank and the depreciation of the currency, it would be a very good profit. For the time being, it seemed that the recovery period was just a little longer. There were some that took 5 years, some that took 7 years, and some that took 10 years. As for those that took more than 10 years, because the roads weren't built that well and had to withstand the pressure of hundreds of tons of carts, those that took 10 years were already very good. The far-sighted merchants liked to build roads and bridges. They could see how fast the Great Tang was developing, and the more advanced and practical the technology was, the more the people would earn, and the more goods there would be, so they needed more circulation. Currently, they were calculating the recovery period based on the circulation of goods, but they believed that it wouldn't be long before the actual income would be several times or even more than 10 times the current calculation. At that time, they would have to sign a supplementary agreement with the imperial court to redistribute the sudden increase in profits. Back then, when they signed the contract, it was agreed upon. As such, the officials of the imperial court couldn't directly spend money to build roads. If they wanted to build a road, after they had just gotten someone to measure it, and before the money was allocated, a merchant came to ask for it, would they give it to him or not? Now, all the officials knew that Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan intended to spend the money on the training of Great Tang's workers. This official thinks that this money should be spent. Wang Bei, who was in charge of the money, stepped forward and said to the crowd. Many people were surprised. Wang Bei, weren't you always at odds with Zhang Xiaobao and the Wang clan? Why are you speaking up for them? Could it be that you have reached an agreement with Zhang Zhong just now? But how much can you give away? How much do you get? Is it worth it? Wang Bei didn't care about the different gazes of others. As an official of Great Tang, this official sincerely supports this spending. At first glance, after the money is invested, it won't be recovered in a short period of time. However, when the country does things, it can't always look at the short term. Just like Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan's Chaoyang operation, now that the merchants are providing the money, our country's national treasury can support it even without the merchants. It's just to let the merchants remember the basic moral requirements of being a person at all times. I believe that everyone has seen it now. 10 years, how are the lives of the people of our country? How many of them are educated? It's not like in the past where it was difficult to understand government decrees. As long as the government posted the notice, the people would be able to understand it. Knowing the affairs of the country and discussing them, knowing the law and abiding by the law, learning the material and applying it, understanding the principles and taking the right path, this is the power of education. The little sapling that Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan planted many years ago has finally grown. I believe that in another 10 years, in another 20 years, the talents cultivated by our country's education alone will be enough to easily suppress the other countries and make them unable to raise their heads. This is the cultivation of children, but now it's the cultivation of adults. It's the cultivation of people who missed the education period 10 years ago. 10 years later, everyone, think about it. When all the craftsmen have their own skills, what will our great Tang be like then? After Wang Bei said this, those who previously had other dirty thoughts began to admire him. At this moment, his back was straightest. He put aside his personal grudges and spoke from the perspective of righteousness. Even if he was an enemy, he would gladly do it. Then, the officials began to consider according to Wang Bei's ideas. This was especially so for those officials who had seen outsiders. They deeply felt the envy and yearning of the people of other countries for Great Tang's education, as well as the fear and desire for Great Tang's technology. Li Longji sighed in relief and nodded. Good, I also feel like I'm in a dream recently. I almost can't believe that this is what our Great Tang is like. Come, bring me the newspaper. I'll read a few articles. Chapter 1239. Article 11. All fees for small-scale individual businesses will be waived, but they will not be allowed to move around and sell their goods. Those who are farmers and become individual businesses will not be listed as merchants. Those who are merchants can pay a fee to change jobs at any time. The same goes for craftsmen. Li Longji read out the words from the newspaper, then raised his head to look at the others, waiting for them to discuss. Your Majesty, isn't this a mess? Zhang Jiuling said with a bitter expression. Merchants were lowly and were 2 levels lower than farmers. Although merchants had a high status in many situations, at least others had a psychological advantage when compared to merchants. Zhang Zhong's subordinate, the assistant minister of the Ministry of Works, Wei Shu, glanced at his leader and had no choice but to stand up and say, I also think so. In the past, farmers and workers tried not to do business because of the issue of origin. Now that they can change jobs as they wish, isn't this encouraging everyone to do business instead of production? What do you say, Official Zhang? Li Longji asked Zhang Zhong. Zhang Zhong had been focusing most of his energy on the Research Institute of the Ministry of Works and had not spent much time studying economics. Hearing the emperor ask, he shook his head and said, I don't know. Ha, you're not as good as me, Li Longji teased. As soon as these words came out, the others were speechless at Zhang Zhong. His Majesty did not always say, I, in private, but this was a court meeting. Wasn't it too frivolous to talk to Zhang Zhong? Yes, I'm not as good as you. Zhang Zhong's personality was a bit straightforward, especially when it came to the etiquette of a ruler. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone over to Zhang Xiaobao and called his son Zhang Jidushi during the imperial examinations and reprimanded Zhang Xiaobao for not knowing the rules in court. Because of this, the officials could not find fault with him in this aspect. The consequences of doing anything to him were very serious. It was obvious that they were bullying an honest person. Just look at Wang Bei and the others. Li Longji helplessly shook his head when he saw Zhang Zhong's solemn expression. He couldn't understand why Zhang Zhong couldn't be more tactful. Why couldn't Zhang Zhong be more tactful? Why couldn't he make small talk or flatter him? That would make him seem more amiable. If she insisted on being stubborn, how many people would have attacked her if she didn't have her son and daughter-in-law behind her? But this was fine as well. If others were attacking him, he could use him without worry. This was the sort of person who, when asked if he had betrayed the great Tang with a blade by his neck, would do his best to turn his head, pledging his loyalty to the country with his life. "All right, since you don't know, I'll ask your son's adoptive father to tell you." Li Longji looked at Gao Lishi. Gao Lishi was a eunuch. Normally, he was not supposed to speak during court meetings, but speaking in private was very useful. Now that his name was called, he had no choice but to stand up. Gao Lishi smiled at Zhang Zhong. Zhang Zhong hesitated for a moment before returning a smile. He really wanted to stop Gao Lishi, but after thinking about it, he realized that this was not the first time Gao Lishi had spoken. Moreover, Gao Lishi was able to reason with him. If he stopped Gao Lishi, he would be jealous of him. "Since His Majesty has asked me to say it, I will show my incompetence. Everyone, just treat it as a joke. If there is anything wrong with it, please laugh it off." Gao Lishi said humbly. None of the officials dared to treat him as a joke. Treating him as a joke would be a real joke. It is said that agriculture, industry, and commerce are interchangeable, and that one's birthplace will be confused. In truth, the birthplace of agriculture, industry, and commerce exist only in name. Farmers also buy and sell things, such as the excess food in their homes or the poultry they raise. Craftsmen naturally have to sell the things that they make. Merchants also buy land to grow crops and research tools to create and process goods. As I said before, let the farmers gather together and use the 100 households as the foundation. However, there is no need to collect rent and instead use money as a substitute. Isn't that the same as being a merchant? Why is there a need to make such a clear distinction? Interchangeability may seem chaotic, but it is actually a process for the common people to adjust themselves. Those who believe that they can do something well can do it without worrying about the influence of their birthplace. I trust that everyone knows how fast our great Tang is developing. There are many talented people in every industry, and the purpose of birthplace is no longer to divide people into different classes. Instead, it is to make statistics and management more convenient. In the past, it was said that merchants were inferior to farmers because they did not produce anything and only transported goods. Now, everyone knows that merchants do not only buy and sell, they can also promote the development of other industries. For example, if merchants say that chickens are worth money, everyone will work hard to raise chickens. If merchants say that handicrafts are worth money, craftsmen will produce more. Merchants can even transport goods from overseas. A qualified merchant is very useful. Let's talk about the people on the top list of billionaires. Speaking of this, everyone seems to find it funny. Its appearance was caused by a children's game for Monopoly. Now, it has become a symbol of whether a merchant is successful or not. At the same time, it is also a test for merchants to learn the economic rules. Then, everyone knows the rules. Not only do you have to be rich enough, you also have to pass the test. Otherwise, even if you buy a lottery ticket and win a few million strings of coins, you won't be able to enter the list. Of course, a person with a few million strings of coins won't be able to enter the list. When Gao Lishi said this, many people laughed. Some people found it amusing, while others laughed nostalgically, thinking of the past. Back then, who would have thought that a game would have such a far-reaching influence? Who would have thought that a game could earn so much money? Who would have thought that the person who designed the game would do everything for money, but no longer care about money when he had money? That was a legend. That was a legend. Time seemed to have gone on for a long time, but it also seemed to have always been in front of them. Monopoly had always been popular, but the person who designed it no longer played games. That period of time could not be sealed away. There was no need to recall it because it would never be forgotten. Therefore, everyone began to reminisce about the time and place of a court meeting. Li Longji narrowed his eyes and experienced the happy process of reminiscing. He said, all right, let's get down to business. Let's talk about the origin, status, and contribution of merchants." Everyone snapped back to their senses and smiled at each other as though they were not the ones reminiscing. Gao Lishi thought about what he wanted to say and continued, "Any merchant who can enter the list has contributed a lot to the country. They will take the initiative to communicate with places that provide goods when there is a need. For example, there is a merchant who goes to Wanyan County and says that he wants to buy a large number of poultry in half a year. The price is relatively high, about 100,000 birds. The county magistrate of Wanyan County is an ordinary county magistrate, not from Jianjia. Because the difference is very big, an ordinary county magistrate will immediately tell the people when he hears it, and the people will increase the scale of breeding. For merchants who can't enter the list, he will wait for Wanyan County to breed them. However, for merchants on the list, he will send people to investigate. After finding that there are too many, he will tell the people that you can't breed them like this. Otherwise, when he collects enough, you won't be able to increase the price and will lose money. At that time, he will think of a way to adjust, discuss with the people, discuss with the government, and help the local farmers to distribute and scale. Otherwise, he will be severely punished. Of course, if the county magistrate is someone from Jianjia Academy, he will adjust immediately without the need for merchants to adjust. I'm just saying, people from Jianjia won't passively wait for merchants to come to them. For example, the county magistrate of Wanyan County has already finished planning and took the initiative to negotiate with merchants. He is only waiting for the contract to be fulfilled. After saying a bunch of words, Gao Lishe didn't say anything else. He had already expressed what he wanted to express. Zhang Jiuling reacted quickly and said, "Thank you, General Gao. I didn't think it through just now, but now I've thought it through. Indeed, we can't look at merchants like we did in the past. They all have a sense of responsibility, and the stability of Tang is indispensable to their contributions. Besides, Xiao Bao has always been suppressing the status of merchants, but suppressing doesn't mean belittling them. Xiao Bao just doesn't want merchants to have a higher status than others. We shouldn't discriminate against merchants." Then I'll continue reading the last one. Li Longji didn't expect that everyone's views of merchants were so different. However, there were merchants in every official's family. Otherwise, where would they get money? Their previous salaries weren't enough for them to eat, drink, and play. They just didn't want the status of merchants to increase and be out of their control. Otherwise, why do they have to use the method of exchanging benefits when raising taxes? The biggest resistance behind the scenes came from them. Li Longji understood everything, but he couldn't directly kill them. If he killed them all, who would help him govern the country? Moreover, if he killed a bunch of them, the new ones wouldn't be clean either. Article 12. The local government will set up a county-style carriage company. 90% of the Great Tang's army will be eliminated and used for transportation. At the same time, the postal department will be integrated, and a uniform stamp will be issued. A uniform fee will be set for the weight and distance of mail. After reading the last article, Li Longji put down the newspaper and picked up his teacup. However, he didn't drink from it. Instead, he used the lid of the teacup to sweep the water. The civil and military officials on both sides once again entered a state of contemplation. Some simply returned to the small table at the back and sat down to drink tea. There were chairs and tables behind them, but there was only tea on them and no snacks. They could sit there from the start of the court session. The main reason was that the people at the front didn't sit, and the people at the back wouldn't be able to see the emperor if they sat. Moreover, they didn't have such treatment in the past, so they weren't used to it. The discussion today took too long, and some couldn't stand and had to sit down to rest. After a while, everyone sat down as if they were having a tea party. Only the chamberlains of Jin still had to stand there with their sabers. When Li Longji saw the situation below, he was amused. Usually, when the court session was held in Xingqing Palace, everyone would sit. However, when it came to the morning court session, everyone would stand. Later, he discovered a problem. If they stood for too long, once the court session ended, the officials wouldn't immediately return to work. Instead, they would rest, which would affect their efficiency. Therefore, during the winter, not only did they have to install heaters, but they also had to provide chairs for everyone. After drinking a few mouthfuls of tea and waiting for someone to refill it, Li Longji looked at the people sitting and said, "Everyone speak. Your Majesty, the tea is good." Zhang Tsen, the person in charge of the agriculture temple who was being stared at by the emperor, had no choice but to speak. "And have you eaten breakfast? You're drinking black pu'er tea." Li Longji nodded and continued to stare at Jiang Xian. Seeing that he couldn't avoid it, Jiang Tsun rubbed his stomach and replied, "I haven't eaten." "No wonder I'm hungry." This official was thinking that since many of the military horses have been eliminated, could they be used for farming? "We can use oxen in dry fields and paddy fields." "Where's Xiao Qing?" Li Longji looked at the Minister of War, Xiao Song. Xiao Song also didn't eat breakfast. There was only tea on the coffee table, but he brought his own food. He didn't bring any buns. There was stuffing, but he was afraid that the smell would spread too far. He brought hot and dry biscuits. Each biscuit was only a quarter of the size of a palm. There were pickles in the biscuits. When he ate one biscuit at a time, there was no smell, so he wasn't afraid of choking. At this moment, he took the time to eat 2 biscuits. Before he could swallow them, he was called. It must be said that martial artists were also quick-witted. While chewing, Xiao Song quickly picked up the cup of tea and gulped it down. Then, he sighed and said to the emperor, "Your Majesty, this is indeed a famous pu'er tea. It's very tasty." Li Longji smiled and nodded, "I still have hibiscus cakes." "Xiao Qing, do you want to try some?" "No need, this official isn't hungry." Speaking of the military horses, this official is only worried about one thing. After the military horses are eliminated, will the remaining ones be enough for war? Although there are guns and cannons now, and there's no need for soldiers to ride on horses and charge with swords, transport still needs to be used, right? Cannonballs and bullets, as well as food and medicine. Xiao Song rubbed his chest as he spoke. Just now, he had swallowed too much and choked. However, he wasn't afraid that the emperor would see him eat. It was normal to eat in the morning court, but if he was caught, he would be embarrassed. It would appear that he had no ability to steal food. "Is there anything else?" Li Longji asked. "No." Xiao Song put down his hand that was rubbing his stomach. He felt much better. "Then you don't have to worry about this. Xiao Bao and Cuckoo have already discovered that the cannibals have gathered no less than 30,000 cavalrymen at the border of the 2 countries. They said that the Arabian horses are more useful and they want to take them by surprise." Li Longji explained. Xiao Song raised his hand and scratched his head. This official knows about the border. 30,000 cavalrymen is very difficult to take down, right? If you fire the cannons, the cavalrymen will scatter. If you use the guns, when the enemy charges, you must kill the horses in front. Then, the horses at the back will trip or take a detour. When you take them down, there won't be many left. That's their problem. If they can't take them down, they'll think of other ways. In any case, they said that it's enough to leave 10% of the military horses. Li Longji also didn't know how to take other people's horses. "I don't understand. I don't understand." Xiao Song shook his head and didn't say anything else. Li Longji didn't care what Xiao Song was thinking. His gaze continued to sweep across the officials below. This time, there was no need for him to name names. Yuan Qianyao, who was very close to him, put down his teacup and asked, "In the beginning, there was only military mail and no civilian mail. Later, Xiao Bao and the others set up one. Then, there were private companies in other places. Relatively speaking, it's still considered standard. However, the mailing locations can't cover the entire country. Will the newly established mailing department steal their business?" "This official has the same question," Yuan Rong echoed. Xiao Bao's intention might be to steal their business. After all, their coverage is small, and their information system isn't as complete as the imperial courts. Xiao Bao didn't let his own intelligence department participate. Li Longji didn't understand what was going on, so he wanted someone to help him analyze it. At this moment, Zhang Zhong was annoyed. He still had things to do in the Ministry of Works, so he said, "This official will immediately get Xiao Bao and the others to send a detailed explanation. We'll look at it when the time comes and discuss it. In the end, we still have to do according to what's written in the newspaper." Why bother? Only Gao Lishe understood what was going on. As long as Her Majesty encountered something that Xiao Bao was involved in, she would definitely consider it carefully and think of a way to scheme against Xiao Bao. It was a habit that had been formed over many years. It wasn't easy to change it in a short period of time, and perhaps it would never change. The officials nodded. They were also vexed. Seeing that no one was helping him, Li Longji sighed gloomily. Court is adjourned. I'll get the Imperial Kitchen to send each of you a boxed meal with 2 meat and 2 vegetables, so that you won't feel uncomfortable secretly eating below. If it really doesn't work out, set aside a quarter of an hour during morning court to eat in the hall. Those who came early can come in to eat. I really don't need to worry about any danger if the palace doors are opened early. It's now the era of firearms. As long as you don't bring explosives or guns in, it's fine. In the future, make sure to reserve diesel locomotives. Even if you're late, you won't be considered late. Disperse. Disperse. Waving his hand, Li Longji didn't leave. He sat there and looked at the sky. No one knew what he was thinking. The civil and military officials were now used to the situation where etiquette was getting worse and worse. Her Majesty was beginning to be pragmatic. She saved time on etiquette and could do other things, even if it was just listening to music or reading stories in the newspaper. Therefore, the officials didn't want to waste time. They drank all the tea in their teacups and got up to leave. Those who brought food couldn't eat it. When they went back, they would eat boxed meals. At noon, there would be people from Savant's restaurant or Success House who would send them food. Life was getting better and better. This bunch of people, I really don't know what to say about them. Li Longji shook his head and complained. He then instructed Gao Lishe, go to the pear garden and choose a few crosstalk and skits. I'll be happy. Tell me, what kind of reaction do you think the 12 national policies will have? Gao Lishe turned his head and glanced at eunuch Luo Bin. Luo Bin was very perceptive and ran to the pear garden to make the arrangements. Turning his head, Gao Lishe reached out to help Li Longji and said, I think it will be very chaotic. After a day and a half of chaos, Xiao Bao and Cuckoo will take the opportunity to take action and resolve the unstable situation. If it were me who saw the newspaper, I would definitely be confused. I've been confused for a long time. The officials haven't even discussed the specific consequences, let alone the common people. Chaos, chaos, chaos. After a while, there will be stability for a few years. Li Longji waved his hand, indicating that he didn't need anyone to help him. He walked to a corner, grabbed a bicycle, and rode it toward the pear garden. Now, he didn't sit in a sedan anymore. It was slow and not as comfortable as riding a bicycle. Gao Lishe also quickly took a bicycle from someone and rode it. With a wave of his hand, the large bicycle team left Hanyuan Palace Hall. There were also people with guns running behind them. The hot air balloons above were signaling to each other, doing their job as guards. It could be said that Li Longji wasn't afraid. The palace and the main streets were illuminated by large light bulbs. The hot air balloons in the sky were on alert. There were also many hidden sentries. Who could come in and assassinate him? When reading the newspapers in the morning court, the major prefectures had already begun to post the newspapers. There were also people who delivered the newspapers to the various counties. Those who were too far away could only see the newspapers at night. As for the villages that were further away, they had to be weekly or monthly. In any case, there wouldn't be anyone who would go out of their way to deliver the newspapers every day. The commoners who didn't subscribe to the newspapers at home all gathered at the bulletin board. Those who subscribed to the newspapers also gathered in front of the bulletin board. In fact, there were many people who subscribed to the newspapers in the prefectures. This was because in the end, they didn't lose money at all. Moreover, by cutting out the parts where there were discounts from the merchants, they had an overall advantage. The first few pages of the newspapers were content, while the back pages were filled with advertisements. The merchants who placed the advertisements would bear the cost of the subscriptions. Furthermore, it wasn't that wool came from the sheep's back. The price of similar products was the same. If they placed the advertisements in large quantities, they would earn this portion of the money. If the quantity was large to a certain extent, the price could be lowered when the goods were purchased. This would cause the merchants who didn't advertise similar products to not have to pay extra, but they would earn less. The law of the market was just that interesting. Of course, the Yaman's bulletin board couldn't put the advertisements on the front pages. They only put up the useful ones at the front. There were 2 copies, and both sides had to be displayed. The commoners who weren't in a hurry to work basically liked to look at the bulletin board in the morning. They would chat with others and discuss the state affairs. The commoners who were used to reading the newspapers came to the bulletin board today. When they saw the first 12 national policies, they suddenly felt unaccustomed. What's the meaning of this? A bunch of policies came out today? In front of the Yaman's bulletin board in Luoyang Prefecture of Hunan Province, a person who usually learned to read a few words from a child was stunned when he saw the 12 national policies. Usually, there would be a national policy every 10 days or half a month. Most of it was about the new laws. The economy was developing too quickly, so there was a need to constantly supplement the laws. Therefore, most of the time it was about the laws. Most of the time, it was about the new security requirements and the situation of the poultry being farmed to let everyone pay attention. Most of the advertisements were printed according to the situation of each prefecture. Unless it was a chain store that crossed prefectures, there would be merchants from other places who would come to spend money. 1, 2, 3, 12. There are 12 in total. Another person followed. In fact, he was just showing off that he knew how to read. You still need to count one by one? At the end, it says 12. Of course, it's 12. The main question isn't how many, but what is written every day. The person who spoke first continued. Everyone looked at it as if they were reading it. Occasionally, someone would read a few words. Not only did they not read it completely, but even if they did read it, there were some who read it wrongly. Who can tell us what the newspaper means? Everyone crowded to look at it for a while and realized that they didn't understand. They began to look around for someone who understood, such as a scholar. Otherwise, if they let their children read it out at home, they wouldn't understand either. Everyone looked around for a while and finally found a scholar who had just finished his breakfast. More accurately, he was a teacher. He taught in the largest school in the prefecture and was a high scholar. Usually, he would only teach in the afternoon. In the morning, he liked to wander around the bulletin board to gain extra respect. Teacher Yuan, good morning. Quick, help me take a look. What's written on the newspaper? I don't understand. As soon as he arrived, someone greeted him. The teacher with the surname Yuan smiled reservedly. He strode through the path that others had made way for him to get close to the notice board. He looked up and said, the first rule, the first point is, it is a series of material tax forms minus the farmer's rent and poll tax. It is replaced by money. All farmers need to sell their grain to raise money. Teacher Yuan, can you tell us what it means? When the people around heard this, they couldn't understand. It means that in the future, you don't have to give them food or other things. You just have to give them money. Using money to pay the rent, isn't that making things difficult for them? After Teacher Yuan finished explaining, he added another sentence. The people around looked at him and waited for him to continue. Look at this. You have to sell your own crops and exchange them for money to pay the tax. If you sell your crops for a lot of money, then it's fine. But if you sell your crops for a little money, then won't you lose money? And when the crops are harvested, it's also the time when the crops are cheap. How can the imperial court do this? Teacher Yuan's tone became serious. He was obviously very angry. He didn't understand how the imperial court changed in the blink of an eye. The people around started to discuss. Then what should we do? How can we do business? Even if we raise chickens, someone will come and collect them. It's the same for our crops. We have to wait for the government to come and take them away. Teacher Yuan, are you sure you didn't read wrongly? Teacher Yuan, please think of a solution. How did it become like this? Teacher Yuan, please read on and see if there are any other explanations. Alright, I'll read it. Mr. Yuan suppressed his anger and continued reading the newspaper. The first and second point is that the cultivators are allowed to work with other cultivators in the area around them. All decisions will be made by the leader, and they will be protected by the corresponding laws. After reading the second point, the people around continued to wait for his explanation. Teacher Yuan pondered for a moment and then sneered, "All right, you don't have to worry about selling your own crops or silk. The imperial court has already thought of a plan for you. 100 households will be grouped together and one person will be chosen as the leader. Or you can group a village and choose one person to be the leader. If you want your own land, you can discuss with him and see what you want to plant. Once the decision is made, you are not allowed to change it. When the time comes, you will be responsible for whether the crops you grow lose or earn. If you don't know anything, just rent the land to him and wait for him to hire you as helpers. If you lose or earn, it will all belong to him. After all, you don't have to sell your own crops anymore. But if the leader feels that your family's health isn't good and you work slower than others, he won't let you be his helper. You will have less income and it will be worse than farming on your own. What a good imperial court, what a good national policy. This is clearly land annexation. This is the law of the jungle. This is self-elimination. I can't help but ask, has the Tang Dynasty's emperor changed? Are Xiao Bao and Cuckoo not around anymore?" Teacher Yuan had turned into a roar at the end of his words. His hands were clenched into fists. The people listening to him were dumbfounded. Even the yamen runners standing next to him were dumbfounded. According to what Teacher Yuan said, wasn't this a national policy? It couldn't be, right? For a moment, the people were scared. They were afraid that Teacher Yuan's words were true. If the emperor was changed, then Xiao Bao and Cuckoo would also be gone. What should they do? The sky was falling. "What nonsense are you talking about?" A person walked out of the yamen. He was the secretary of the Department of Defense. The people all knew him. He was Su Wei, Su Yingyi. Secretary Su Wei's eyes swept over the people and Teacher Yuan. He said, "Look at the back." The 12 national policies were written by Xiao Bao and then unanimously passed by the imperial court. What happened? Do we need your money to see a doctor? Don't let children go to school for free? Don't you have a place to complain? Can't you eat and starve to death? Don't you have a single old man to take care of? Teacher Yuan shook his head and looked at the back. Indeed, Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan's names were written. There was also a seal. He was even more puzzled. If it was Xiao Bao's policy, why did he allow for the annexation of land? Furthermore, he used the first point to speed up the annexation of land the next day. The people around were not as worried. When they heard that it was Xiao Bao and Cuckoo who wrote the national policies, they were relieved. Then, someone asked Teacher Yuan, "Teacher Yuan, did you think wrongly?" It was clearly written. How could I think wrongly? I am a high scholar. How could I not understand such a simple thing? Teacher Yuan, no one said that you don't understand. It's just that. Look at it from the beginning. Think carefully. Everyone makes mistakes, right? There were still people who did not believe him. Teacher Yuan was so angry that he did not speak. He looked at Tiana. Advisor Chao laughed and helped him out. It's just as Brother Yuan said. Xiao Bao and Cuckoo's national policies, according to the literal meaning, are to encourage the annexation of land. However, I don't think that they would have the intention to harm the people. It's just that we are unable to understand the deeper meaning. Everyone, there is no need to panic. That's right, that's right. What's there to be afraid of? Would Xiao Bao and the rest harm us? I don't believe it. They would have done it long ago. Why wait until now? Isn't that so? If they say that I am harming myself, I believe it. If they say that Xiao Bao and the rest are harming me, I don't believe it. I guarantee that there is something that we do not understand. Let's not worry about it first. Teacher Yuan, please continue reading. There are still 11 more. Teacher Yuan was clearly in a fit of pique and didn't say anything. I'll read it. Su Wei, who had already read the 12 national policies 3 times, stepped forward. Official Su, please continue with your work. Just find an official to do it. An official to do it is even busier. I'll read the same thing. The second policy, the Tang Bank will reduce the interest rate in one go, and can increase the amount of loans in the future. Su Wei read the second policy out loud and explained it according to what he understood when he was reading the newspaper in the yamen. The purpose is to tell everyone not to keep their money in the bank. Take it out and spend it. If you are not willing to spend it, the interest rate will decrease when you keep your money in the bank. There is no need to worry about the money you have saved before. Furthermore, it encourages everyone to work together to open a workshop and take a loan from the bank. The interest rate will be lower than before. Furthermore, the bank will have enough money for you to take a loan. There is no need to be afraid that the bank will not have enough money. But money will become less and less valuable. Teacher Yuan could not help but say. Su Wei shook his head. That is hard to say. Whether money is valuable or not depends on its purchasing power, not how much it can be spent. The second policy is just like that. Su Wei then read the third policy, which was military service, and the fourth policy, which was for students to work as volunteers. The people did not understand the first 2 points, but the third point did not matter. Being a soldier was much better than being in the past. In the past, they had to prepare their own weapons and armor, and they were not paid. Furthermore, there was only so much time every year, and they could still shoot to satisfy their cravings. The food in the army would not be bad, and after some training, their bodies would be strong. In case there was a need to fight, they could pick up a gun and contribute to the country. The fourth policy was for students to work. If they want to do it, they can just treat it as training. Don't study all day and become stupid. Su Wei then read the fifth policy. The people felt that this was good, and it would be more lively in the future. The sixth policy was for lottery. The people were indifferent. Only those who opened gambling houses were troubled. The seventh policy was for craftsmen to use the same ruler. The people felt that it was not bad. In the future, when making furniture, there was no need to worry about the different sizes. The eighth policy was for food quarantine. The people around the announcement nodded their heads. This was right. What if they ate something bad? The ninth policy was for workers to have a minimum wage. Good. In the future, if any employer dared to give them less, they could sue them. As for rest, there was no need for that, right? Rest when you are tired. Rest when you are not tired. Just wait and see. If you really can't do it, you can do it secretly. The 10th policy was for the government to train. In the past, they could go to the yamen to learn and then arrange for them to work. Now, they just had to go to the yamen. Perhaps it would be a waste of time. They did not know if there was a need for them to learn. The 11th policy was for sellers and stalls to not have to pay any money. Was there such a good thing? There was no management fee? All the money they earned was their own? The 12th policy was for them to send things to distant people in the future through the yamen. They did not know if it was cheaper than the original. If it was cheaper, they could use the yamen. Would it be faster to send things? If it was faster, they could also use the yamen for the same price. Su Weinian explained a little, and the people followed suit. Their thinking was very simple. Everything was for their own benefit. Deeper knowledge had nothing to do with them. Alright, that's the general idea. There is a lot of knowledge in it. Including the one in front of me, I have already read it 4 times. I still do not understand it. In any case, most of them seem to be beneficial to you. After Su Weinian finished, he added this sentence. He shook his head and remembered what he came out to do. He continued to work. After he left, Teacher Yuan was still in a daze. Previously, he had concluded that Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan's national policies were harmful. However, after the last 10 policies came out, they started to become good. What was going on? Teacher Yuan, look, you misunderstood Xiaobao and Cuckoo, right? I knew it. How could the 2 of them harm us? In the future, we can go and watch normal football matches. It won't be like now. Sometimes they play, sometimes they don't. It makes people anxious. Someone nudged Teacher Yuan and said, "But the first policy is indeed. I don't understand. Is there a need to say that Xiao Bao is scheming? You may think one thing, but it is actually another. You may think that he is good to you, but he might not be good to you. You may think that he is bad to you, but he might not be bad." "Yes, he is not bad," someone said at the side. Teacher Yuan really could not understand what was wrong. He shook his head. "Forget it. I will take one step at a time. We will see in the future. I am going back. You can see for yourselves." After he finished speaking, he left with his hands behind his back. He bent down and lowered his head. It seemed that he was still thinking. The people did not disperse. They still surrounded the bulletin board and said a few words from time to time. They were mainly afraid that they would forget. There were 12 policies. They should memorize them first. It would be easier to show off when they told others later. Especially when their children came home from school, they would let them read it and ask them what it meant. If they could not answer, they would teach it to them. They would let them understand that parents were still very powerful. Chapter 1240. What are you going to perform tonight? Zhang Xiaobao asked Wang Wan as the two of them returned to the restaurant and waited for the news of the firing. Wang Wan thought about the few performances she usually prepared and replied, "How about I sing Xiao Hongchen? Song and dance. Then I'll sing Ocean's Laughter." Zhang Xiaobao followed suit. "Why don't you choose a few new songs? They're old songs that have been around for more than 100 years. There's nothing new about them for you and me," Wang Wan suggested. Zhang Xiaobao shook his head. "No. To us, there aren't any new songs. The so-called new songs have been around for a very long time. Besides, the popular songs of that time didn't even last for more than a few years. If we hadn't come here, I reckon that after a decade or so of normal time, the people of that generation wouldn't even remember the popular songs." "That's true. Then why do you still remember Xiao Hongchen and Ocean's Laughter?" Wang Wan began to discuss this question with Zhang Xiaobao again. The two soldiers seemed to have forgotten that there were still several battlefields as they nervously prepared. It didn't matter if it was because they were confident of victory or because they didn't care. In any case, there wasn't a trace of the haze of war in the sky from them. Zhang Xiaobao thought about it and said uncertainly, "It's probably related to the mode. The two songs both use pentatonic modes, which is the easiest way to resonate with the human body and make it easier for people to grasp the intervals." "Am I right?" "How would I know? Anyway, the Europeans like a different kind of structure, influenced by the 12 equal temperaments. It's mainly early church music, which generally pursues overtones. Later, due to the hard work of the colonial era, there were black elements in America. Under the influence of European music, rap music was added. Rap music is popular not because of the good mode, but because of the strong sense of rhythm. Different from the mode that affects the human body's body structure and voice resonance, the biggest influence is the human body's blood flow and heartbeat. It can be said that they lead to the same destination by different means." Wang Wan analyzed the relationship between the existence of music and people from another perspective. Zhang Xiaobao thought about it, but he really couldn't come to a conclusion. He could only return to the original topic. "Then, are we still going to sing Laughing at the Mortal World and Laughing at the Sea?" "Sing? Why wouldn't I? The 3 Strokes of Plum Blossoms is even more old-fashioned. Haven't there always been people who like to listen to it? There are a few songs in common. Let's not talk about that." In the past, someone actually said that Sister Zhang sang better than the original version. "Why don't you sing the Matador song from there?" Wang Wan had always liked the original version. She felt that the original version not only put in a lot of effort at the beginning, but also had a contemporary feel. "I'm not going to sing. I don't like narrative songs. I've realized that the difference between China songs and Europe songs is that they focus on the details. Just like language, drawing, and so on, China's songs focus on depth and connotation. When singing, Europe wants to directly express their delicate emotions through their voice, while China's songs focus on touching the inner feelings. Their ideologies are different, so it's very difficult to perfectly integrate them. If one day they really integrate, it's China that embraces them, not them absorbing China. The simplest example is the division of land. Their large land is divided into small pieces, divided into different countries. If it weren't for special geographical restrictions, it would be impossible for such a situation to exist in China. They would have been annexed long ago, or they would have been annexed by others. That's why our Chinese people are a nation that loves peace and stability. We don't like to divide a piece of land into many parts, and then we're always on tenterhooks about fighting each other. Zhang Xiaobao talked about ideology from music, and then praised his own nation. Wang Wan was angry and amused. We all know what that last sentence means, so don't say it. Okay, where are Xiaobei and the others? Zhang Xiaobao realized that he had been back for a while, but he didn't see his younger siblings. They're probably preparing for some performance. They didn't go out yesterday, saying that they were afraid that someone would attack them during the war. If they were hurt, it would affect us. The provincial governor invited them to Yizhou school to take a look, but they refused. In their courtyard, other than teaching each other, they're assembling toys. Wang Wan smiled at Zhang Xiaobao. In fact, she wasn't worried about anything happening in Yizhou. The guards she brought had firmly controlled the entire prefectural city. Her younger siblings were very sensible and stayed at home to not cause trouble for the adults. Xiaobei and the others were currently in their courtyard. They weren't teaching each other, nor were they assembling toys. They weren't even preparing for a performance like Wang Wan had said. They were reading newspapers, ignoring advertisements and stories, and studying the 12 national policies together. Xiaobei's face was full of sadness. I can't see anything. It involves all kinds of aspects. It's a mess. Gap, this is the gap. Xiao Yuan supported his chin with his hand and nodded. There has always been a gap. I originally thought that the gap between us was gradually narrowing. Today, I realized that it was because our older siblings didn't use their full strength. The more I think about it, the more my head hurts. Why don't we just assemble toys? Toys, toys. Is research more important, or is playing with toys more important? Xiaobei pouted. For us, playing with toys is the most important thing. We need to learn. We need to learn while playing, not reach the sky in one step. Reaching the level of our older siblings is just a dream, absolutely. Brother Xiao Hai, what do you think? While speaking, Xiao Yuan flipped through a catalog with the names of various toys. She wanted to choose one to play with. They had a lot of toys, so many that they could fill up a large room. They were divided into many types, and each type of toy required them to treat seriously. They contained all kinds of knowledge. Even the simplest pushcart game had to be played with brains after adding in the rules. But at least they were playing, unlike now, where they stared at the words on the newspaper and pondered over them. When the words were combined, it wasn't a poem, nor was it a story. It was a strategy related to the stable development of the entire Tang Empire for a period of time. Xiao Yuan felt that with the current level of the Tang Empire's inspection team, they should stay away. Perhaps in another 10 or 20 years, they would be qualified to participate. Xiao Hai, who had strong logical thinking ability, was currently in a confused situation. He wanted to use his logical thinking ability to organize the 12 policies, but the more he did, the more illogical he felt. It was too painful. Hearing his brother Xiao Yuan's question, he sighed and said, "Anyway, I still have to learn. Sister said that my mathematics level is at the level of a second to third year in a certain period of time, the kind that has a little contact with mathematical Olympiad. There's also something like first to third year in high school, followed by professional first year to fourth year, and only a certain category. After that, it's a graduate student of that category. Then when will I be able to understand all of the categories? Then I'll continue to learn to a higher level, to the extent where I can calculate the circulation of the universe and calculate the trajectory of time and space?" Sister also said that she can only teach me to the level of a graduate student in one of the categories. I have to walk my own path in the future. Otherwise, she told me to wait for her and my brother to find time to specially study it. With their talent, they might be able to teach me to a higher level. Xiao Hai trembled as he spoke, clearly feeling the fear of the future. Wang Wan had indeed told Xiao Hai that if she wanted to continue teaching Xiao Hai, then she and Zhang Xiaobao had to give up many things and focus their energy. Then, the two of them would study mathematics together. With the two of them's IQ and previous experience, there was hope to achieve the dream of educating Xiao Hai to become an academician. And as for academicians, no matter which discipline they were in, on the path that belonged to them, it was only the beginning. Even Zhang Xiaobao admitted that in his lifetime, he was just a baby who had just opened his eyes in the field of economics. The world was so strange and varied. Let's understand one thing first, okay? Don't worry about the rest. Xiao Bei saw that everyone had lost interest in the 12 national policies, so he made a request. Zhang Chong shook his head vigorously. It's not that I don't support you, it's that I don't understand it at all. It's not like you don't know my brother's style. What's the use of taking out one of the policies? It's a chain of policies. Not one of them can be missing. It's much more difficult than the various reforms we learned in history. That's right, that's right. Xiao Yuan echoed and said, after seeing my brother play, I know that the reforms of the past were really too simple. Let's play Monopoly, okay? Okay. Xiao Bei gave up on continuing to study the 12 national policies. What program are they preparing? Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan were waiting for time. They did not wait for a telegram, but they did wait for someone to check on Xiao Bei. They're playing Monopoly. Many people are busy. They want to add in the 12 national policies rules. They say that they want to carefully study the reforms in the game and reach half of your level. The person who went to check on them reported. After he left, Zhang Xiaobao looked at Wang Wan and smiled. Wang Wan also smiled and said, the people who proposed the reforms in history are all heroes. What ability do we have? It's nothing more than summarizing the path taken by our predecessors. In fact, everything we have was given to us by our predecessors, so we have the obligation and responsibility to pass it on to our descendants. Wang Wan thought about the development of various parts of the world in various historical periods and was filled with emotions. The figures that stood out in every period seemed to be right in front of her eyes. They were so vivid and distinct. Whether it was success or failure, there was a star that belonged to them in the night sky of history. Zhang Xiaobao smacked his lips twice and knocked on the table with his hand. He said, that's why humans are more powerful than other creatures. The inheritance of human experience is systematic. Xiao Bei and the rest are really smart. They know that they don't understand, so they let people put the rules into Monopoly. As they play, they can feel the specific changes. This is an era full of vitality, and we have a lot of potential. What you can do is to invade, and you're encouraging me to invade as well. Wang Wan habitually attacked Zhang Xiaobao. We're spreading the seeds of civilization so that the people of the world can feel the abundance of spring and the harvest of autumn as soon as possible. And the heat of summer and the cold of winter, right? Reporting, a call from the front. The vanguard of our first army has engaged the garrison of the Akangduo. They're advancing at full speed under the cover of artillery fire. While Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan were leisurely chatting, a person who was guarding the telegram ran in and reported to the two of them. Okay. Zhang Xiaobao was very happy. They were finally fighting. As for the engagement, that was impossible. What kind of fire did the other side have? The other side probably had a stomach full of anger. Wang Wan thought for a while and waved to the person to leave. Then, she analyzed to Zhang Xiaobao. Using artillery, it's probably because the local garrison of the Akangduo has gathered troops. At the same time, the infantry also took bulletproof measures. If they use thick wooden shields, normal bullets can't penetrate them. At the same time, the enemy's arrows are also effective. The Akangduo are learning to be smart. Zhang Xiaobao nodded and agreed with Wang Wan's words. Hot weapons were indeed superior to cold weapons. It was an overwhelming advantage. However, the two of them pursued 0 casualties in the battle. As for running and falling to death, being bitten to death by poisonous snakes, or even dying of illness, that didn't count. To achieve 0 casualties, long-range attacks had to be in place. Otherwise, once they entered the range of the enemy's long-range weapons, there would definitely be casualties. That was absolutely unavoidable. Now, what was tested was the supply of artillery shells. As long as they were willing to spend money, the Tang Empire's military supply could keep up. It wasn't difficult to destroy the enemy. Wang Wan still looked indifferent and said, "The Akang duo can only last through the first wave of attacks. Even if they make wooden shields, when the situation is out of control and they are defeated, they will definitely throw away the shields. Or, the main defensive weapons of the defending troops will be removed by the small cannons. War is about logistics. They have no way to use their advantages to counterattack and can only passively defend. If we want to rely on mobile warfare, our commander must be stupid and advance into their encirclement alone. I believe that our commander won't be so stupid. Yes, it's just like India. Not the current India but the India of our time. They only know how to buy weapons from others. They don't produce good weapons themselves and rely on buying. If they really fight, they will be used up after a few rounds. What will they do then? Buy more. If they don't use nuclear weapons, it won't take too long. 3 years, and the entire country will be worn down." Zhang Xiaobao followed and deduced. The cavalry that the Akang duo could think of was to gather at the periphery and wait for an opportunity to attack. Then, they would make simple defensive equipment. This should be the result of previous small-scale conflicts. But if they had to rely on bulky and heavy wooden and iron shields to block the barrage and were blasted by the small cannons a few times, would the production be able to keep up? How many people and tools did they have to produce the shields? Thus, it sounded very serious. In reality, the use of artillery had always been beneficial to their side. As for which direction they should continue to advance and occupy, they would need to see the actual situation. It would take 3 to 5 days to understand. "They're not going to fight a blitzkrieg, right?" Zhang Xiaobao asked again. "Relying on infantry to fight a blitzkrieg? Not to mention now, even Germany during World War II couldn't fight a blitzkrieg when faced with the current Akang duo. They had to fight a positional battle and advance step by step." Wang Wan chuckled and shook her head as she imagined the map of the Akang duo's territory. This was the strategy that had been formulated before. Originally, they wanted to wait for the Akang duo to gather more troops and supplies at the border. Then, the navy would disembark. But there was a small problem, so they had to start the war early. Even if they started the war early, they had to take it slow. They had to give the Akang duo the illusion that the Tang Empire was attacking from land. The Akang duo probably wouldn't think that the Tang Empire would play a land battle. So, what we're waiting for now is Junla's movement. I've been angry this whole time. Why did they have to wait for us to start the war? When their people go back, they'll give us some trouble. I'm guessing that they felt that they had received a lot of rewards from the Tang Emperor this time. They think that we have to be on good terms with them because we want to fight, so they took the opportunity to indulge. But they forgot about the two of us. F***ck, they dare to bully the women of the Tang Empire. If I can take this lying down, I'm not a man. I'd rather not fight the Akang duo to let them understand what they can do and what they can't do. Zhang Xiaobao thought of the previous matter again. The more he thought about it, the more sullen he felt. Wang Wan's face was also cold. She gritted her teeth and said, "This is not over. Even if they don't resist and let us catch them, we'll have to punish them when we have time. After we complete the early strategic goal of fighting the Akang duo, you go and cripple Junla through economic means. I'll organize the troops. If they make a move, we'll go and kill them directly." Reporting, our troops in Mud Polo have broken through Guangyan City and are camping outside the city. At the same time, we're chasing the enemy who escaped from the city in the form of small troops. We're not going to get supplies from the city because we're afraid that the people in the city will play tricks. We'll continue to bombard or use explosives to blow up the walls in other directions of Guangyan City. Another person came in to report. Got it. Go and wait. Send back as soon as there's news. Who's in command in Mud Polo? They didn't send electricity when they attacked, and only told us when they drove people out of the city? Isn't this called, a general on the outside can't obey the orders of the emperor? We'll deal with him later. That's referring to the situation when the communication system was not developed in the past. Now there are telegrams and various transmission points along the way. Would he die if he told us in advance? When Zhang Xiaobao heard that the city was broken and the troops were camping, he remembered to send a message and curse it angrily. Wang Wan looked at Zhang Xiaobao's expression and said with a smile, "That's our family's people. They probably feel that it's meaningless to tell us in advance. If they tell us in advance, we'll fight. If they don't tell us, we'll still fight. It's better to tell them after the fight. If it were the generals of the imperial court, they wouldn't dare to do so. It's easy to be accused of having bad intentions. Our family's people can be so flexible. They're clearly playing with us. I can't say whether it's good or bad to have such soldiers under us." Zhang Xiaobao also laughed. His family's people could do so because of Wang Wan's teaching. None of them were serious at all. Especially when facing weak opponents, they always liked to show off. If he was right, what if something went wrong? If he was wrong, there were many such generals in history who were famous generals. All right, don't worry about him. If he can't fight, send a report to him in the middle of the night and scold him, Wang Wan said. He might not be able to sleep in the middle of the night. He'll definitely come up with some wicked ideas, like setting a trap or something to let more man-eating drillers do a night attack. Zhang Xiaobao analyzed this person's personality. That's possible, Wang Wan agreed. Reporting, our troops guarding Gamma Labo have not found the enemy crossing the river to fight. They're now crossing the river. The vanguard has already passed by 15,000 people. Another person came in to report. Wang Wan frowned and muttered, "Then where are the enemy ships?" Chapter 1241. The so-called crossing of the river was actually the Brahmaputra River, which was also the Brahmaputra River in India. Although it was called India, there were very few indigenous people there. The land was fertile, the flow of the river was abundant, and there was a lot of rain. There were also many types of animals and plants. The reason why there were so few people in such a good place was because there were also many floods. It rained almost every year, and most people did not have the courage to live there, especially the small rivers and tributaries. Because there were water, mountains, trees, and wild animals in the mountains, water could provide the necessities for people's survival. Thus, the cannibals treated this place as an important place to attack the Tang Empire. As long as the army crossed the river and continued north, some of them would die and they would be able to reach Lhasa City. There were many good things in Lhasa City of Tibet. Other than the Tang Empire's army helping them when they were affected by disasters, the usual things were all transported to Lhasa City by the Tang Empire and sold there. Tibetan specialties were also sent to the city and then transported to Tang by the merchants of the Tang Empire. Trade with each other and exchange what they needed. The original Tibetans had better days, and the Tang Empire also got what it needed. Compared to the previous war, the trade activities were many times better. Then, what exactly was there in the city that the cannibals coveted? First, there were various advanced tools for accurate calibration. Second, there was a small hydroelectric generator and 2 small wind generators. There was also a munitions factory directly controlled by Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan. There was a medicinal material classification center, a simple processing center, countless pressure cookers, endless salted eggs and century eggs, cloth and silk from the Tang Empire, finished medicines, and hundreds of tons of salted fish and shrimp sent over from Qinghai Lake. There were also books, seeds provided by the Senongsi, and a large research branch set up in the area. There were barrels of soybean oil and high-quality white wine, cleaning products, skincare products, and iron ingots with good hardness and toughness. There was also a smelting workshop set up by the Tang Empire. There were 3 main telegraph stations, a substation for the Weather Collection and Measurement Department, a branch of the Institute of Disease Prevention and Research, a bookstore for the humanities and history editors, a breeding base for the military and police Tibetan mastiffs, a breeding base for goshawks, and a farm for other animals and birds. These were all things that the Tibetans did not even dare to think about in the past. They were a bunch of things that could directly form a social development system. Zhu Zan of Child was still the local manager, and the Princess of Jincheng still treated him as a married wife. The difference was that Zuzan Chitta had thrown the idea of independence beyond the 9th heaven and buried it in the bottomless abyss. What he had to do every day was to help manage the merchants that came and went, and to learn all kinds of books from Princess Jincheng. On the other hand, Princess Jincheng was a woman of her word. Other than raising the child, she would instill the thoughts of the great Tang into the Tubo people. Occasionally, when she was in a good mood or feeling unwell, she would allow the other women to accompany Zhu Zan for the night. When the weather was good, the couple would travel to the capital of the great Tang Empire and see if they could bring back anything good. Thus, such a good city was targeted by the man-eaters. As long as they could attack it, even if they couldn't defend it, they could move the craftsmen, students, and other things back. However, the other places were heavily guarded, especially the Wuchang region in the north. Originally, there was a direct route that could easily lead to the original location of the Turkic Khaganate. But now, that place had become a training ground for the Great Tang. Small-scale conflicts were incessant, and all kinds of weapons were used for testing. In a situation where there was no other way, the man-eaters gathered an army of 120,000 and planned to sneak through the Brahmaputra River's sluggish basin. Then, they would cross the mountains and ridges to launch a surprise attack. The other armies in the other places would cooperate with them to feign an attack. Although it was called a feign attack, it was actually a suicide mission. The man-eaters' idea was not bad, and they were willing to pay a huge price for it, even going as far as to take a detour. According to the historical records that Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan knew, they had never done so before. But the current Great Tang was developing too quickly, so quickly that it was like a piece of cake smeared with honey in the eyes of others. Everyone wanted to take a bite out of it and then retreat, getting as much benefit as possible. It was much better than watching the Great Tang develop to its limits and then turning around to bite them. Of course, if everything developed according to history, the Great Tang couldn't have sent scouts everywhere, especially the Brahmaputra River. If one went north, the geography was extremely harsh. Canyons, snowy mountains, and dense forests were not places that people should go. Man-eaters believed that they would have to sacrifice a lot to attack this place, but they would be able to catch the enemy off guard. Thus, they secretly built the ships. They didn't need ships that could be transported across the ocean, and they didn't need ships that could withstand strong winds or currents. As long as they could get the people to the other side of the river, they would have completed their mission. Man-eaters' calculations were not bad. In the past, if he didn't care about other battlefields and just concentrated his forces to attack, the Tibetan cavalry wouldn't have been able to hold. Now, they no longer wanted to seek victory on other battlefields, even paying the price of religious compromise. But their opponent was not the original Great Tang, but the Great Tang controlled by Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan. The two of them would not allow their intelligence network to have a blind spot. No matter where the border was, regardless of the local environment, as long as there was a border, they would definitely send people to investigate. After the two of them received news of the man-eaters' movements, they also secretly sent their soldiers over, and they even sent a total of 46,000 people. Their goal was that after defeating the man-eaters, some would stay behind while the rest would continue the pursuit. The man-eaters had sent 120,000 soldiers, not more than 1 million, but less than 200,000. How many supplies would 120,000 soldiers need? Where were their supply points? Where was the source of the supply lines? Are there any local Indian ethnic groups involved? Both sides moved in the same way, stealthily. The difference was that the Great Tang side sent over small cannons, which were mortars, and grenade launchers. For this reason, the grenades were specially primed, otherwise, they wouldn't be able to be fired. As for why they didn't send the field cannons over, it was because they lacked transport helicopters. The two of them originally planned to attack when the enemy was crossing the river, and then continue to attack after crossing the river. How could they make the other party attack at the time they requested? As long as they sent out a small portion of their troops to stand on the other side of the river, the man-eaters would be afraid that the great Tang would send more troops and expose themselves. Under such circumstances, they would have no choice but to attack earlier. The idea was good, and there weren't any problems during the operation. The problem was that when the man-eaters saw the small portion of Great Tang's troops, they didn't forcefully cross the river. From the simple telegram, the other party seemed to have given up. Wang Wan was puzzled. Their side had sent over 15,000 people, so where was the man-eaters' resistance? Whether or not their ships were captured by them could be judged from these 2 points: that the other party had made a strategic move in advance. Go and ask. The content of the telegram just now was too vague. Let them say a few more words. Zhang Xiaobao ordered the person who passed on the message. After the person left, Zhang Xiaobao didn't know whether to comfort himself or Wang Wan. He calmly said, "There's no need to rush. The man-eaters aren't gods. It's just that the information they sent over wasn't detailed enough. The commander there is Zhang Shougue, and he sent the eunuch Yang Xishuan to supervise the troops. We'll send 2 battalion commanders, graduates of the Third World. I'm not worried about the man-eaters suddenly disappearing, but I'm worried that the man-eaters will destroy the enemy's ships and kill the future slaves." Wang Wan continued. "That's true. We have information on him. This person likes to use the lives of his enemies to intimidate them. We don't need that now. I hope he learns to be smarter. Otherwise, we'll lose slaves. I'll have him carry the stones himself." Zhang Xiaobao had a good understanding of Yang Xishuan. Wang Wan's words were also recorded in history. This person liked to kill, and he didn't even let go of captives. In Zhang Xiaobao's view, this was a form of intelligence. Killing the enemy's captives could intimidate the enemy, and at the same time, reduce the enemy's youth. Otherwise, if you attacked and captured a lot of people, bringing them back would be a problem. What he was afraid of was that he would use this intelligence on the man-eaters. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan's goal wasn't to kill people, but to obtain resources. Human resources were also resources. They had only built one railroad, and they had to continue building it. Zhang Xiaobao suddenly said when he was thinking about who should die in the construction of infrastructure. "We also need people to blow up the river. Blowing up the submerged reefs is almost a death sentence. We can't use our great Tang people. I can't bear to add people to it." Wang Wan looked at Zhang Xiaobao in confusion and asked, "Blow up what river?" "It's the river between us and India, the Brahmaputra River and the Brahmaputra River. If we can form a navigation channel, it will be very useful." Zhang Xiaobao explained. "No, the place we're connected to is affected by the geographical environment. It's not navigable. If we build a dam in the future, we can add a few sets of generators." "Can you think of something more practical?" A map appeared in Wang Wan's mind. She shook her head and rejected Zhang Xiaobao's suggestion. "I'm being practical. The geographical environment can be changed. In the past, it didn't change because of India. China has to spend a lot of effort and countless manpower and material resources to transform the river so that it can be navigable. However, India directly said that you can come over. What do you think China should do? Is the investment in the early stage gone? Tell me, which river in the world can't be transformed? The main problem is whether the investment is proportional to the return. We're not at that time now. Why do you want to stop the duo crossing the river and send troops to track down their supply line?" Zhang Xiaobao analyzed the situation at that time and asked Wang Wan. "I'm thinking that if someone in India gets involved, we can attack them, question them, and force them to admit their mistake. Then, we can give up a line of the Brahmaputra River, including a certain area on both sides. They can't control it now, and there are always floods. They think that by paying a small price, they can get the forgiveness of the Tang Empire. So, we can occupy the river, just like the Qing Dynasty ceding land to pay reparations. Occupying the Brahmaputra River is occupying the lifeline. What's there to be afraid of floods? We can build a dam and slowly transform it. If we don't have the opportunity to occupy it, we will be struck by lightning. Wang Wan repeated the strategic intention that they had discussed before to Zhang Xiaobao. That's right. Then why don't we transform the river together? We can't even think about building a dam to block the river within 10 years. It's better to open it to navigation. Who said that canyons can't be bombed? Who said that canyons can't be bombed? Destruction is always easier than construction. As long as we are willing to sacrifice the lives of others, I promise to bomb the river within a year and complete control of the entire river basin within 3 years. That's the entire basin of the Brahmaputra River and the Brahmaputra River. I've already thought about it. Capture captives and let them bomb the canyons and reefs for me. If they don't die after the first bomb, I won't let them go a second time within a month. If they don't die 3 times in a row, I'll directly give them a generous reward and let them get rid of their status as captives and slaves. Then, our country's people who lost their land through the 12 national policies can go there and give them a large piece of land on the plains created by the river. They can buy cattle from India. Anyway, India doesn't value cattle, so they can buy them for our people to use. If it rains heavily and floods are coming, our people can directly retreat and rush over. It's not a pity to rush over the land that was taken for free. If there's any harvest, it's ours. Zhang Xiaobao was in a state of almost sleepwalking, imagining the good times in the future. Wang Wan also listened with a look of yearning. When Zhang Xiaobao finished, she pointed at Zhang Xiaobao's head and said, "You really don't blush when you talk nonsense. India doesn't value cattle? Value a value? I remember that Indians value the neem tree more. After other people plant it, other people can casually pick the branches and leaves of whatever they pass by and use it to brush their teeth. Can cattle be casually used by other people?" Zhang Xiaobao said with a serious look. "Brushing teeth is valued? Then cattle also needs to be valued, because Indians also use cow dung to brush their teeth. Say something else, I'm disgusted." Wang Wan patted Zhang Xiaobao on the shoulder. He actually led the topic to this. "I'm disgusted too. Anyway, we have to occupy their livestock. The river has to be built, and people have to be arranged there. This is not called colonization, it's a normal migration, or it's arranged to a slightly more remote place to enjoy high-wage job opportunities." Zhang Xiaobao stopped himself from thinking about the habits of India and dreamed of planting his own land in other people's land. Report. The person who had just left came back and said to the two, "The troops guarding Karma Nagpo have sent back news again. They found that there are many cannibals, large and small, and there are countless boats. When the cannibals saw our small troops, they suddenly panicked and scattered. Our troops took the opportunity to cross the river and chase them. The enemy ran on horseback and ran on 2 legs. The enemy also threw away a lot of weapons, some made of wood and iron, and some made of wood. There are also places where they live, some made of branches, some made of leather. They also drank from wooden buckets. Some were spliced together with pieces of wood, but most of them were hollowed out in the middle of a piece of wood. Most of the food they eat is also made of wood. There are..." "Little Yang, get to the point. They foolishly sent back such detailed information. Why did you read it?" Zhang Xiaobao glared fiercely at the person who reported. Did the daily habits of the cannibals need to be explained in a telegram? The person called Little Yang by Zhang Xiaobao smiled shyly and nodded. Okay, what Zhang Shogui mainly said is that they have already occupied the original camp of the cannibals. They just occupied it. Now, some of the follow-up troops are left behind, about 5,000 people, and the others are crossing the river. The troops who have already crossed the river are chasing the enemy's scattered troops and capturing many prisoners, mainly to let the people who can speak the language of cannibals shout. General Zhang Shogui also said that a lot of the supplies of the cannibals are still there, not burned, and not protected by anyone. Zhang Shogui wanted to ask what to do next. He judged that the fleeing cannibals might look for grass roots to eat. Our troops only need to find a place with a water source to encounter the cannibals. But it is impossible for the fleeing cavalry to kill horses for food. It is more likely that they will run far away, at least to the next supply point on the supply route of the cannibals, or even attack the Indians to plunder survival resources and obtain physiological satisfaction. The main content of the telegram was relatively euphemistic, but the meaning was clear. The cannibals were defeated before the battle. Those are 120,000 people, and 120,000 well-prepared soldiers. They ran away when they met our small troops? Madam, do you believe it? Zhang Xiaobao asked. Little Liang, send back a telegram. Tell General Zhang Shogui to retreat immediately after a day's pursuit and defend the riverside. Use the resources provided by the cannibals as supplies. It is forbidden to kill prisoners for no reason, and it is forbidden to go in alone. Process the captured ships and use the local resources to continue to build simple transport ships. Wang Wan instructed Little Liang. Little Liang did not ask any more questions and turned to leave the telegram. Wang Wan turned back and said to Zhang Xiaobao, I believe it. Winning a war is not a matter of numbers. We made a mistake and overestimated the cannibals. They wanted to launch a sneak attack on us. When they see our people, the first thing they think of is the advanced weapons and communications of the Tang army. They are afraid that if they run too slowly, the Tang army will call in more people to attack them. If a few of them run first, they will definitely lose the morale of the entire army. It's not like this didn't happen when the Japanese attacked China in the past. In the First and Second World Wars, this kind of phenomenon is really too normal. What I want to say is that if they run away, our strategic purpose will not be realized. Isn't it to kill the enemy's strength? After they run away, how many people can we catch in a day's pursuit? Zhang Xiaobao felt that the cannibals were not giving them face. What could they do if they persisted? Couldn't they learn how to attack halfway? It seemed that they could not. As long as the people in front of them passed by, the machine gun positions and artillery positions would be set up. The gap between weapons made many tactics useless. Wang Wan did not continue to explain to Zhang Xiaobao. She knew that it was not that Zhang Xiaobao could not learn, but that sometimes he was not willing to learn military skills. Even if he knew, he still pretended to be stupid and asked her. Wang Wan was helpless and happy about this. She was happy because she understood that Zhang Xiaobao wanted to set her off, let her perform, and then be happy with him. Many men did not understand this. Generally, women understood, so their family life was very happy. What made her feel helpless was that Zhang Xiaobao actually knew that she understood his intentions, but he still pretended to be stupid. At this time, Zhang Xiaobao did not look pretentious, but cute. He was really good at coaxing girls. Hubby, tell me, how did you train? Wang Wan suddenly asked. It had nothing to do with the war they were talking about just now. I saw it in family psychology and couple psychology. Zhang Xiaobao immediately knew what Wang Wan was asking, and his current behavior and tacit understanding explained his understanding of the two kinds of psychology. What I'm asking is, forget it, I'll tell you about the 3 essentials and the knowledge of how to use them to survive, okay? Wang Wan returned to the previous topic. Okay. Zhang Xiaobao sat upright. Chapter 1242. First point. Wang Wan raised a finger. Zhang Xiaobao looked at it seriously. When he realized that it was not the middle finger, he did not do anything else. To survive, the military structure cannot be lacking too much. Even if there is only one person left in a battalion, the structure is still there. Why is it a battalion and not a squad, platoon, or company? Is it because there are more people in the battalion? Zhang Xiaobao said enthusiastically. There are more people in the regiment. I am talking about our time, not now. Now, the regiment is under the battalion. The battalion now is a regiment, or a reinforced company? Yes, reinforced company. Now, a regular battalion has about 600 to 700 people, and a reinforced company can have more than 1,000 people. For example, Guards company. Zhang Xiaobao continued to be enthusiastic. Yes, Now we are not talking about gods or not. We are talking about why the battalion structure needs to survive. The number of people in our battalion can form a natural survival unit. It is gathering, farming, hunting, guarding, and building. The number of people in a battalion can be replenished, and in the case of no one to rely on in the wild, they can survive independently. In fact, they can even survive, but it is very difficult. As for a platoon of 30 people, can they survive? In theory, they can. If they want to live a good life, half of them need to be from the Special Forces, and the other half need to graduate from the Shonen Science and Technology University. Then their survival rate is higher than that of a battalion. Are you saying that almost all of them are like the two of us? Zhang Xiaobao puffed out his chest and said confidently, "Your role will not be reflected in the situation where we do not meet other tribes. Then what if we meet them? Very simple, we will no longer be two people. They will be confused by you and then work for us. Even if there is a language barrier, I believe that you have the ability." "Thank you." "You are welcome. That is why, in order to maintain the survival of an army, the existence of the structure is very important. It is enough to replenish the personnel. The role of the veterans must not be ignored. The second point is that we need a strong political leader. In the situation where we cannot achieve military victory, he must use his rhetoric to paint a picture of a pie for the soldiers. Is it to quench one's thirst by looking at plums?" Zhang Xiaobao echoed. "More or less. Under normal circumstances, this political leader can't be someone who participated in the direct command of the battle. Otherwise, confidence won't be able to gather. If he's still a commander who participated in the battle, he can still play the role of winning people's hearts after his failure. Then, he's not an ordinary person. For example, Napoleon. I think that in this era, the two of us should be fine, right?" Zhang Xiaobao didn't have much confidence when he spoke. "Who knows? The people of the Great Tang already treat us like gods. In their hearts, we represent invincibility. If we lose, then I'll have to readjust my domestic policy. How about we also make a movie and advertise it, saying that we had times of failure, but in the end, we stubbornly survived. This way, we'll leave a psychological hint to the people that we're also humans. Our strength lies in our tenacity." Zhang Xiaobao smacked his lips, as if he didn't want to adjust the policy after failing. "Do you think it'll work?" Wang Wan asked. "No, absolutely not. We're gods. We're not mortals. The people think so too. Third, what's the point of thinking about this? I don't believe that there's anyone who can compete with us in terms of military and economic power now. At most, a sudden natural disaster will cause losses to our army, but we can slowly push forward and try to circumvent the weather disasters as much as possible. The third is simple. In addition to the above structure, we can't lose much. We also have to have a political figure with strong affinity and charisma. We also have to collect the necessary resources for human survival. Snow mountains and grasslands are not easy to live in. That's why I admire the Red Army at that time. Brainwashing needs to be done to a certain extent." Wang Wan raised her third finger and said. Zhang Xiaobao rubbed his nose and asked, "Then, what does that have to do with your previous arrangements?" "The third is that they need water and food. There are more fish and shrimp in the river, and many animals go to the river to drink water. We just have to leave the boats and search along the river. Why should we follow behind and eat dust? What if the small pursuing force is surrounded and annihilated?" Wang Wan finally said why she had told him that the troops would be back in a day. If the defeated army wanted to regroup and rest after losing all their supplies, they had to find a place with sufficient water, not all of them going to their long supply line. Only when the defeated army went there would the people at the supply transit point would be scattered. The combatants would eat and drink and then take away the valuable things. The non-combatants would take away the relatively less valuable food and fodder. They would never be entrenched, unless it was the second line of defense that had been set up before. The idea of the cannibals at the Brahmaputra River was to launch a sneak attack. Their usual supplies were calculated, and even slightly insufficient. Why would they set up layers of defense and play a strategic game of depth? Listen to you. You're the commander. Do you mean that my logistic supply has to be increased to the Brahmaputra river line? Zhang Xiaobao considered his mission. Originally, it was to defend. Now that a large portion of the more than 40,000 people had advanced, the supply line would inevitably be extended. Yes, your mission is very important. Think about it now. I'm going to see my brother and sister. I'll cook tonight. Wang Wan got up and planned to leave so that Zhang Xiaobao could think about where to get people to send supplies to the front line. Zhang Xiaobao tapped his face a few times with his hand and said to Wang Wan, who had walked to the door, "Tell the kitchen to prepare the seafood for spicy soup and chicken soup. I'll go over to prepare the ingredients later." "You're not thinking about logistics?" Wang Wan asked in surprise. "No need. I'm not going to send food to the front line over there. Tell them to save their bullets. Don't shoot hundreds of bullets when facing one person. I'll get someone to send ammunition once and bring enough money. Let them find a place in India where there are people to buy things," Zhang Xiaobao said casually. Wang Wan raised her eyebrows. "Buy?" "Yes, buy. If we encounter a large number of Indians, use our Tang Dynasty money to buy from them. The use of international currency will be perfectly reflected at this moment. Let them tell the Indians that if they don't want to use money to buy gold, they can go to Tang Dynasty to buy other things or wait for Tang Dynasty merchants to go over," Zhang Xiaobao said with certainty. Wang Wan thought about it and felt that it was possible. There might be people in Tang Dynasty who had never heard of countries like India or India, but the Indians would definitely have heard of Tang Dynasty. For the Indians, it was very cost-effective to exchange food for foreign currency. Usually, they would not be able to exchange their food for Tang Dynasty's money because Tang Dynasty did not lack food. Just as she was about to agree, Wang Wan suddenly thought of something very important and asked Zhang Xiaobao, "Are you sure they know about Tang Dynasty's money?" "It's fine as long as they know the Tang Dynasty's army. We don't have to print a batch of fake money for them. Now, that place is not completely under our control, right? And there are many people there, right?" Zhang Xiaobao said. "Where?" Wang Wan was confused. "Trust River," Zhang Xiaobao said. "Then it's called Indus River in our time. Do you think there are people there?" Wang Wan rolled her eyes at Zhang Xiaobao. Zhang Xiaobao did not blush at all. "Yes, there should be." "Then, is there anyone in Pakistan's Fort Murmocht now?" Zhang Xiaobao asked again. "Yes, the duo cannibals are there. There are quite a few of them. It's an important entrance for us to attack the duo cannibals. Do you really not remember, or are you just trying to find something to say?" Wang Wan was too lazy to continue talking. Yes. I'm thinking of something else. Let them quickly take down Fort Murmocht. What is it called now?" "No name, right? It's the Laval tribe." "What are you going to do?" Wang Wan asked. "Occupy. Let the troops be fast. First, occupy a few salt mines. Send a report to Lessa City and let them print salt tickets. Mobilize Shuayun's family and send the printed salt tickets to our troops in Brahmaputra River. Let them rob some horses and quickly go to the relatively nearby places to tell the locals that we have salt tickets. We will exchange them for salt later." "Isn't it more direct than money?" Zhang Xiaobao thought of a solution in the blink of an eye. Wang Wan sighed. She knew that the troops would be stationed there for a long time in the future. That was because the current Hindus did not know that the place Xiaobao wanted to occupy had several very good salt mines. Their salt mainly came from the original Tubo side, which was Qinghai salt. "How much salt does that place have?" "It could be used to build roads. However, it was very expensive to bring it to India." "How expensive was it?" "Salt itself was a currency, and its value was very high. Ever since her family occupied Qinghai Lake, she had made a lot of money just selling salt. Of course, for the domestic market, it was just a flat transportation fee, but not for India and Duoshire. This was probably the reason why Duoshire always wanted to attack. In the past, trade was not restricted. Now, salt was a strategic resource. If it were anyone else, they would not be willing to be restricted like this. Therefore, it seemed that most of the people fighting were the various countries and vassals of India. In fact, Duoshur and the various countries in India had discussed this. Different religions could unite when they had a common enemy. Wang Wan knew that even though the Indians who had been convinced by the Polyether were not helping either side, they had been secretly helping the Polyether all along. Once they knew that there was good salt at their doorstep, they would almost 100% send troops to get close and try to get it. It could also promote the temporary alliance of their various countries and races. Of course, if our army was strong enough, it could also become a large trade market and conduct more trade with various countries and tribes in India. Xiao Bao, I can't think of what will happen after your goal is achieved. We have to continuously transport arms and medicine there. Don't you understand what kind of demand the Indians have for salt? Wang Wan wanted to persuade Zhang Xiaobao to take back this decision. After all, her family still controlled an area of Qinghai Lake. Anyway, they were selling salt. Why should they cut off the original market? Consequences? Can we still fight a planetary war? Zhang Xiaobao pretended to be stupid and said, Chapter 1243. Then you should organize the logistics of the space battleship to fight Star Wars. I'll tell the kitchen to make malatang tonight. Sichuan is more humid, like the sea. Eating more spicy food will help with blood circulation. Wang Wan didn't plan to talk nonsense with Zhang Xiaobao. With a flash, she disappeared from the door. Zhang Xiaobao sat there in a daze. Suddenly, he got up and chased after her. As he chased, he shouted, "Wait for me, I'll go too. I have to tell the kitchen to prepare rice noodles. Just seafood malatang won't be able to fill my stomach." When he caught up with Wang Wan at the staircase, Zhang Xiaobao added, "Today's soup should be bland and less salt. We're not some Indian, Arabian, or polyglot. They shouldn't eat too much salt, they'll be thirsty. The problem is that they don't have salt. The drying method of sea salt hasn't been passed to them yet. You don't let their people get close. Say, they're stupid. Why don't they think of ways to learn from Japan and Shinluo? Didn't we have an alliance in the past? That time with Japan." Wang Wan felt that it was sad for a nation to be controlled by salt. "In the past, we worked with many countries in the world. Have we learned all the techniques? How slow is it to directly dry seawater? How many of them know that they need to put in brine later? Let the people by the sea continue to boil salt and put a rope or something in a container. It's good to crystallize. Speaking of which, our people are the ones who are blessed. How much did salt cost when we came? How much does salt cost now? In daily life, other than water, the cheapest thing is salt. 1 copper coin is enough for a person to eat for half a month. This is because the transportation cost is high." Zhang Xiaobao recalled and felt satisfied. He continued to work hard to improve the living conditions of others. Then he sighed, "Salt is the root of so many racial wars." When Wang Wan arrived at the entrance of the kitchen, she stopped and admitted, "Indeed, there are many wars caused by salt. Wars between races, wars between religions, wars between countries, and wars between people. Food and salt are the most basic needs for survival. You can make the arrangements. At worst, we can increase the war investment and try to see if controlling a country's salt can stop its gradual rise. Don't always think about investing. There are returns. They are all places with slavery and caste systems, right? If we control the salt mines there, we will directly control the 2 river basins of India, the Sindhi River and the Brahmaputra River, not the Ganges River. According to what you said, the Ganges can also be controlled because the Brahmaputra River is further away from the Sindhu River. It is now called the Naga River. The 2 rivers basin refers to the place between the 2 rivers. Doesn't that mean you want to control the whole of India?" "What I mean is that you should try not to use force to conquer India, because the man-eaters still need us to fight a long war with them. You can give the Indians more preferential treatment in trade. Wang Wan was afraid that Zhang Xiaobao would calculate and eventually force the Indians to launch an all-out war. That would be very busy. Zhang Xiaobao lowered his head as if he was thinking seriously and then looked up. Preferential treatment, it must be preferential. In the past, if it was half a kilogram of salt in exchange for a slave, I will increase the price by 5 times. 2 kilograms and a half of salt in exchange for a slave, male or female, but not a child. I will not let them raise a child. Their own country has not yet understood how to raise a child. There are also ceramics, silk, glass mirrors, and tea leaves. If it really doesn't work, I will specially mix various kinds of curry powder for them. I would rather let the Tang people eat less chili and provide them first. Wang Wan shook her head and stopped talking to Zhang Xiaobao. She opened the door and went into the kitchen. As soon as she said not to force the Indians to launch a war against the Tang Empire, Zhang Xiaobao used other means to tempt the Indians to fight their own people. Slaves were not planted. There needed to be war to plunder, and they needed to be oppressed by caste to obtain slaves. The kitchen of the Blue Sea Silver Sand restaurant was very clean. The bluestone floor had to be cleaned every day and all the dirt had to be sprayed with disinfectant. If someone wanted to eat at night, another kitchen would be used. The chopping boards for raw meat, cooked food, and vegetables were separated. Except for the chopping board that needed to be chopped raw bones, the rest were all made of bamboo. After using them, they were brushed with an iron brush. After a few days, they were thrown away. Anyway, bamboo grew quickly. When Wang Wan and Zhang Xiaobao came in, they heard the sound of cooking and cutting. Because there was no range hood, the air was full of the smell of various dishes. Zhang Xiaobao sniffed. There is the smell of chopped green onions. How many dishes don't have chopped green onions? I can still smell the oil. Wang Wan also sniffed and looked for the person in charge in the smoke, who was the head chef. It was a little early for the kitchen to cook now, but the people in the inner courtyard didn't eat in a big pot as long as they could afford it. They would only cook in a big pot when they had no other choice. At that time, even Xiao Bei and the others would have to eat with them. Now that they could afford it, the restaurant cooked in advance and put them in insulated food boxes. When the time came, they would take them out for the inner courtyard to eat. Therefore, they were very busy. The head chef had good eyesight and soon found that there were 2 more people in the kitchen. He came over and asked, "Young master, are you 2 going to? We are going to eat malatang tonight. Make some preparations. There are also rice noodles. We will eat them during the performance. Find someone to prepare enough cooked food for the performance venue. We can use a big pot." Zhang Xiaobao ordered. The head chef nodded and suddenly thought of something. He said to Zhang Xiaobao, "Young master, there have been a lot of cows and sheep recently, especially females." Zhang Xiaobao didn't say anything. He looked at the head chef and waited for him to explain. "Most of them are people from the West. They drive the cows and sheep and drink milk along the way. When they reach Yizhou Prefecture, they sell the animals and find other jobs," the head chef said. "Oh, I see." After saying that, Zhang Xiaobao didn't give any instructions. He turned around and left with Wang Wan. "The shadow of war hangs over the sky. I hope they will come more often," Zhang Xiaobao said as he came to the door. Wang Wan nodded. "They are from Tubo, which is on the border with India. They don't want to be directly involved in the war. When they found out about the cannibals and Indians, they had no choice but to come here with their family property. The males were probably killed and eaten along the way. This is an abnormal loss in war. It's just a small loss. It's okay. Give the order. Let the merchants in Jiannan road buy livestock at a normal price. They will find a place to build a farm. There is a lot of alfalfa, so it's not worth much. We can make up for the loss in 2 or 3 years. Moreover, the livestock we will buy along the way will be in good shape. Their genes will be very good." Zhang Xiaobao was optimistic. It wasn't a big problem to exchange livestock from the Indians and Indians. "Let's go and see Xiao Bei and the others." Wang Wan pulled Zhang Xiaobao to the courtyard of her younger brother and sister. 5 o'clock. Let's go until we reach Hongnong County. I will invest 5,000 strings of cash to build a local market. You have to buy when you come in. After Xiao Bei threw the dice, he picked up his little figure and walked 5 steps forward to an open space. He took out the fake money that represented 5,000 strings of coins from his box and handed it to the game referee. He said happily. The map they used was a very vague and abstract map of Hunan province. It was much more profound than the Monopoly games played by ordinary children, but it was also much simpler than the games played by adults. Of course, it couldn't be compared to the top-ranking assessment. That kind of assessment not only depended on how much assets you had, but also your assessment results. If your assessment results were good, the bank would give you a loan to help you do business in the real world. It was the same as when you came up with a plan and looked for venture capital. After Xiao Bei finished speaking, the referee picked out a small model of the market from the box and placed it next to Xiao Bei's little figure. The map was very big. It was 11 meters long and 6.5 meters wide. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to cover the entire Hunan province. If the game didn't end today, they would remember the location and roll up the map. They would put it back the next time they played. That's not right, right? I took out 5,000 strings of cash. Why did you give me a small market? Hongnong County is a big county, not a small county. It's the one that had a flood. Xiao Bei looked at the model and realized that it was a small market. She turned to look at the referee. The referee smiled and explained, "It's a small market. The price of the materials used to build the market has increased. It's mainly reflected in the cost of labor. Hongnong County used to be an important county where the army was stationed. It is now a Shang county and has a lot of farmland. Due to its good location, there are many cattle." That's right. With many cattle, it means that the cost of labor has decreased. Why is it still expensive? Xiao Bei argued. If she had known, she wouldn't have spent the money on the market. Because the land is grouped into a group of 100 households and villages. After the merger, there are cattle for large-scale farming. The team leader fired many of the original farmers. A portion of the fired farmers left the area to seek more income. Some of them wanted to do small businesses. Some of them had good skills and were given a very high grade during the assessment. Hence, their income was high. The final portion went to participate in training. Hence, there was less cheap labor available in the area. The referee patiently analyzed the situation. Xiao Bei blinked and looked at the other 8 people. Everyone looked at each other and communicated with their gazes. After a while, Xiao Yuan reacted and said, "So the effects of the 12 national policies on society are so direct? Then what will happen if the population of Hongnong County decreases? Will it be demoted to Zhongxian County?" No. Because Hongnong County is an important county in Hunan Province, it has developed water transportation. Furthermore, the county will increase the number of merchants seeking opportunities. Hence, there are more immigrants than locals leaving. However, the newcomers are usually people who don't have any skills in their original areas. They won't go to the market. Instead, they are willing to accept low wages and squeeze into the service industry, as well as the port transportation industry. The referee explained to Xiao Yuan again. Xiao Yuan lowered her head and thought hard. Xiaonan interrupted and asked, "Will the previous port workers of Hongnong be affected? What will happen to them?" That depends on how many new products Hongnong has produced. What's the concentration of production efficiency and demand for goods? If the merchants prefer luxury goods, it will cause a large influx of luxury goods from outside in a short period of time. If the local workshops and agricultural groups further increase their efficiency, it will speed up the export of local goods. Because the original port workers of Hongnong have rich experience, the new laborers working at the port will not be as efficient and safe as the local workers. Hence, the wages will be divided into different levels. At the same time, the local workers will be promoted to become the foreman of the new workers. The referee continued to explain patiently. These 9 little guys were the hope of the future. They had to be taught well. It's a loss. Xiao Bei didn't feel that there was anything wrong with the explanation. Hence, She agreed to spend 5,000 strings of coins to buy a small market. The main reason was that her market was beside the county, far away from the workshop. Furthermore, there were many shops in the city. Actually, I should have built a chess room, Xiaobei added regretfully. What you should have built is a gambling site. The investment is small, but there are many people entering and leaving the city. Zhang Xiaobao's voice sounded at the door. Chapter 1244. Xiaobei looked back at her brother and sighed. Alas, there are 12 national policies. Everyone is anxious. It's hard enough to play games, but I don't know what it's like in real life. Just do what you're supposed to do. Let's take a rest. We'll leave the city in a while. There will be a good show tonight, Zhang Xiaobao said to his brothers and sisters with a smile. The little guys began to prepare. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan also went back to their room to rest. Night fell as everyone was looking forward to it. Tens of thousands of Tang citizens who had passed the household registration verification came to the west side of Yizhou City. The stage was not facing one direction, but was surrounded by the crowd. It was a test of the actors' ability to control the situation. They had to take care of all aspects. There was an empty space in the crowd facing the north. Zhang Xiaobao and the others sat there and put the Malatang utensils on the rack. People in other places began to give out lunch boxes. There were no disposable plastic boxes. They were made of thin bamboo slices and could be used again after being cooked. 2 copper coins per serving was enough to cover the cost. As for the snacks, they were handed over to the local merchants to sell. They didn't care how much they sold them. While the host was still talking on the stage, the whole place was filled with the smell of food. Fortunately, the performers had eaten a little in advance. Otherwise, it was easy to not be able to continue the performance. Many people opened their lunchboxes and looked at the food inside, then closed them again and waited until midnight to eat. Although they had been informed that there would be a restaurant selling lunchboxes at night, and they had not eaten dinner, they could not bear to eat now. Otherwise, what would they do when they were hungry later in the night? The host was stirring up the audience's emotions. Seeing this, he pretended to be angry and said, "You look at me after looking at the lunchboxes. Do you think I'm a dish?" The crowd burst into laughter. "Okay, let me tell you. There will be a midnight snack. If you don't eat now, you won't be able to eat too at night. If you take it away, you'll have to pay for the lunchboxes. How about this? In order not to waste everyone's time watching the show, let's eat first. Before the actors appear on stage, I'll sing first. I'll sing a Jiangnan's Purple Bamboo song. I'll repeat it 20 times, and I believe you'll finish eating." The audience continued to burst into laughter. They had never seen the same performance before. In the past, when they had seen a song and dance performance, it was very serious. Whether it was singing or dancing, it was all methodical. The noble mood made the audience full of admiration for the actors. Only when they were listening to storytellers in the tea house would they relax a little. Therefore, when it came to people who sang and played on the stage, they wanted to listen but were also restrained. When they finished listening, they felt that their souls had been washed away. However, if they wanted to feel happy, they needed to flatter others afterwards. There was no such thing on the spot. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan naturally knew what the audience wanted. When it came to elegance, the two of them knew it. Moreover, they could arrange it very well, ensuring that the atmosphere of the venue, as well as the actors' expressions and professionalism, would allow the audience to understand the artistic conception of spring and snow. However, even after the commoners comprehended it, they still didn't gain anything. They couldn't possibly learn it so professionally. Therefore, the two of them began to use the performance method they had at that time. In fact, it evolved from the form of the northeastern two-people rotation. Some people said that two-people rotation evolved from the beggar's method of falling lotus. In any case, regardless of the origin, this method was chosen because it was closest to the commoners. It refined the singing and communication of folk songs, forming an all-round contact and interaction with the commoners from language to dance to musical instruments. During the performance, the actors showed self-deprecation, ridicule, commoner thoughts, carefree, and acknowledgement of the reality of society and unyielding. This was the portrayal of the soul of every normal commoner. Therefore, when it came to the two of them, all the performances and programs were in this style, even if it was a gala on CCTV. But they also understood that at that time, not everyone liked it. A small number of people were unhappy when they saw it. One was people who were criticized by the content of the program, such as officials. The other was a small number of people who lived at the top of the pyramid. They hoped to hear an aria from an opera, to see the fingertips glide over the 88 black and white keys, and then they would squint and think with enjoyment that this was the Ninth Symphony. Or to listen to the high mountains and flowing water, the kind of zither where the performer had to sweep the zither 72 times, which was to sweep the strings continuously, and then think beautifully, this was the 72 rolling and flowing water. Or it would be a national symphony. First, it would be Jiangnan Spring, played by the flute. Then, it would enter the main melody. When it heard the part about the forced marriage, it could even hum in its heart, Dwashi Laudo Suo, Dwashi Laudo Lai 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 Lai. But which commoner would have the time to remember that the sound that appeared was a horn? Who would care about the change in tone of the main spin during the butterfly transformation? The commoners would usually hum a few lines of the main melody, and sing the lyrics, the green grass is green and the blue flowers are in full bloom. If it was the zither, the commoners were more willing to use it as a companion and sing the song, Swallows Fly Together, which was sung by the very famous Qian Shuesan and his wife, Jiang Ying, when they were childhood sweethearts. Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan also liked it very much. Occasionally, they would sing, Swallows Fly Together, the picturesque railings are quiet in the evening breeze. Now, Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan had their family, who were in charge of entertainment, learn elegant and popular ways. If there were people who needed elegance to eat in a restaurant, they would let them experience this kind of atmosphere. Of course, being elegant also meant that the price was high. Moreover, the restaurant also specially provided a venue for the guests to enjoy a Western symphony. There were pianos and so on, but they had only practiced for a short time, only 7 or 8 years. The problem was that the guests did not know what a rhapsody was, so it was fine if they did not play it. Li Longji had once asked Pei Guangting to treat him to a meal. Pei Guangting's family was rich, and because he was an official of the imperial court, he had a 30% discount. Therefore, a blue Danube waltz only cost him 4,900 strings of coins. Including the dishes and drinks, that meal came to a total of 6,125 strings of coins. The change was rounded up, and he only received 6,100 strings of coins. He gave him a small gift and did not give him an invoice. Since then, when Li Longji asked people to treat him to a meal, he would change the program to crosstalk, skit, or sing a few songs. Today's performance was free, so Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan did not intend to put anything expensive on the stage. The piano was quite heavy, and it took a lot of effort to move it around. Tonight's performance did not have a duet or an allegro. There were a few folk music pieces to be played separately and in unison with the folk music. There were also a set of timpani, a drum set, 2 cellos, a harp, 2 trumpets, a trombone, and 2 guitars. Unfortunately, there were no effects instruments, and the timbre was required. It could be considered a combination of Chinese and Western music, although there were no such instruments in the West. The main thing was that Wang Wan and Zhang Xiaobao were going to sing Laughing at the Mundane World and Laughing at the Vast Sea. Zhang Xiaobao chose the Mandarin version, as he felt that the Cantonese lyrics sounded better. However, in terms of emotional expression, Wang Zhan's version was better. Wang Wan also chose the Mandarin version, as the Cantonese lyrics were a bit of a failure. Of course, these instruments and musical scores were all taken out by Wang Wan. She knew how to play them, and she could even teach Zhang Xiaobao. Zhang Xiaobao had always been very sentimental about this. If only he could have been born in the same family and received the same kind of nurturing. How good would that have been? Wang Wan also sighed. Hardships made people. Xiaobao had fought his way up from the bottom of society, showing off his heroic spirit. His life was not in vain. The host on the stage did not know more about the meaning behind this, nor did he know about the past encounters of the young master and young lady. At this time, he was singing the Purple Bamboo tune. Sometimes he would spin around, sometimes he would do a handstand, but he did not stop singing. Originally, it was time for others to eat, but when they saw him playing around on the stage, everyone looked at him. After singing twice, the host half knelt on the ground and stuck out his tongue in tiredness. He said, "Eat, I'm so tired." "Why aren't you eating? How many times do you want me to sing?" "Everyone, please be merciful." There was a cheer from below, and the children brought by the adults also jumped, and clapped happily. The whole party had just started and was full of jubilation, but who would have thought that there was gunfire somewhere else? Zhang Xiaobao had a gratified smile on his face. While cooking seafood skewers for his younger siblings, he also cheered along with them. Wang Wan also put her hand in her mouth and whistled loudly under the surprised gazes of Xiao Bei and the others. Then, Xiao Bei and the others understood. They had to be as happy as possible today, so they coordinated the rhythm and shouted together, "Sing, sing, sing, sing 100 more times." The host, who could control the whole scene, naturally paid a lot of attention to the north. He was a spy, so he had to be vigilant of the situation below on the stage. When he saw the little ancestors shouting, he could easily see their mouths under the bright lights, so he made a bitter face at Xiao Bei and the others. He turned around, pointed behind him, and said, "Did you see that? Did you hear that? Just because you didn't eat, our little ancestors made me sing 100 times. I'm so tired." When the audience heard the host's words, they all stood up and looked at where Xiao Bei and the others were. Actually, only the front could see, but the people behind were blocked. Carry us up high." Xiao Bei had a chance to show off, so she quickly instructed the people around her. Thus, a simple human ladder was set up. At the bottom were 3 people, and at the top was an adult. The adult was riding a little fellow on the adult's neck. There were a total of 9 human ladders. Xiao Bei supported the head of the bodyguard with one hand and held a string of sea cucumber with the other. In fact, it was only half a string. She waved it vigorously, then stopped to take a bite, indicating that she was also eating. She had the temperament of a celebrity and was not afraid at all. Xiao Yuan and the other 8 people were much worse than Xiao Bei. They could only wave their hands and did not do anything else. When Xiao Bei finished eating half of the sea cucumber, she finally got someone to put her down. The audience was excited and sat back down after a while, burying their heads in eating. They were indeed hungry. If they did not eat now, it would be even more difficult to eat later when a better program came up. The host did not continue singing on the stage. Instead, a female host came up and played with him. This kind of thing had not been rehearsed before. In fact, all the program arrangements had not been rehearsed. What they usually practiced was the basics. As long as they had a solid foundation, they could do whatever they wanted when it was time to perform. In the entire Tang Dynasty, the family performance team that Zhang Xiaobao and Wang Wan organized was the only one that could organize and perform immediately when Li Longji suddenly arrived and requested to watch the program. The 2 of them joked on the stage for more than 10 minutes, and the audience had already finished their food at the fastest speed. "Looks like everyone has finished eating, right? I won't wait for those who haven't finished eating. If you stay any longer, it will be my performance." "Oh, there's still that person. All right, let's watch the first program. A famous beauty from Tang Dynasty will perform a song and dance for everyone. Xiao Hongchen, please take the stage." After the host finished his speech, he was the first to applaud. The audience did not know who it was, nor did they know who Xiao Hongchen was, but they still followed suit and applauded enthusiastically. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.